Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm joined by only one of our usual co-hosts tonight. Say hi, Jason.
Hi, Jason.
It's like I walk right into that every time. Sometimes I think I'm going to walk into it, and then other times it surprises me when you say that. Remember that thing I thought I was forgetting when we went live?
Yeah, what was it?
It was the record button.
Oh, well, we don't need that.
Yeah, well, I hit it while we were going live, so it'll be fine. It's all good. It's all because Mark's not here.
I would blame Mark.
It's all Mark's fault. All right, so I guess we're kind of back to our roots today because this is how we started the show. Except we didn't have a live stream then. We didn't have all these fancy tools and toys then.
Back in
But
my day.
back in my day, in fact, man, we were like, even the way we recorded back then was convoluted and crazy. But yeah, here we are.
Oh
And
yeah.
today, what? Oh
I
yeah, you remember
forgot how
that
we.
that whole
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
record locally
Yeah.
thing?
You record on your side. I'll record on my side, and then you can send me the multi-gigabit file.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun when we did it that way. Not really. It really wasn't a lot of fun at all. It kind of sucked. But anyway,
Sounded good.
we kind of do the same thing now with Riverside, except it's a lot more automatic, which is good. So anyway,
Yeah, but it's faster too because it uploads while we're
yeah,
doing it.
yeah.
So
So
as opposed to
it's good that way.
using up all my hard drive space and then trying to send you the file later.
Yeah, right. And then I'm up until 3 in the morning editing because it took a while to send it to me, and then I had to edit, and then yeah,
Yeah. This was all your idea to begin with.
it really. Why are we doing this again?
I don't know.
All right, folks. So we're here tonight. You guys, believe it or not, asked for this, and Jason is flabbergasted as to why. But we did my background story once on the show, just like a couple months ago, and then we did Mark's, and you guys seem to enjoy that content. So now we finally cornered Jason into giving us his story. So tonight is going to be all about Jason. You know, why the heck he got into IT. What did he do like before IT? Was there ever a career before that? Like whatever, right? You guys want to know background? Here we go. So, Jason, I guess the floor is yours. I have a very loose outline, but really you don't have to follow it. This is your story. If you want to just start or, whatever.
Sure. Outlines. Outlines are useful. I'll probably not follow it at all.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, basically I both Mark and I started out with what did we do like before geekery was a career? Like, was it a passion before it was the thing that made you money?
Well, yeah. So I'll go back. Oh, let's see. So this story is actually up on Enable Sysadmin, but going back quite a few years. One of the first things I remember about computers is my father brought home a TI-99 4A.
Okay.
The old Texas Instruments beast, which had cartridges, which was pretty awesome.
I remember
And
those. Yeah.
he brought that home because at the time he was working at a marine. It was basically a tugboat company, and he was doing. He was kind of in charge of like logistics, I guess. So he decided that having a database with all of the information in it would be a lot simpler than trying to track things on paper. So he was at the time. This was kind of visionary because we're talking early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought home the machine and we I kind of looked at it and went, ooh, what's that? And started poking around at it. And he started programming. So he wrote this humongous program in BASIC, full database system, all sorts of stuff. And I would sit there and I did the YouTube thing before YouTube was popular. I sat there and watched him program for hours and hours and hours. And I learned BASIC pretty good at the time. To the point where I started kind of writing my own stuff. I took his code and modified it, made a database for my club, and started learning other things. And then, like, as a family, we would sit down at night and play. I want to say the game was called Adventure,
Yeah.
which is like a single-person MUD,
Mm-hmm.
which is like an MMORPG without graphics. So I guess this was a single player MMORPG without graphics.
So it's just an RPG. Isn't that what an M?
Yeah,
is that what that
text
was
adventure.
before?
Yeah, and it was all text. Yeah.
Adventure, isn't that the game that was featured so heavily in Ready Player One? Wasn't it Adventure?
Possibly.
I could be wrong.
I don't remember a ton of it. We spent hours and hours and hours like trying to escape caves and and avoid pirates and getting treasure and all sorts of stuff. So we had a ton of fun with it. And then somewhere in that vicinity, while we had the TI and after that we had a Commodore, Pac-Man had come out, and I wanted to play Pac-Man. We had joysticks for the game for the computer, and might as well play some video games on it.
Sure.
Except Pac-Man didn't exist for the computer because copyright. So I looked at it and started trying to figure out, like, well, if it doesn't exist for the computer, like I can write stuff in BASIC. How do I write this? And I started writing a Pac-Man clone. I never got it. I got pretty far. I never finished it, but I got Pac-Man on the screen. I got his mouth opening and closing. I got a basic maze on the screen. I got him to bounce around the screen and stay within the borders. But I mean, it took a while, but I got a whole bunch of stuff done, and then I got distracted by other things.
Yeah. Well.
So right around, and this is I sort of explained this in the Enable Sysadmin post. Right around that same time is when I also remember we were headed out. It was like Christmas time. We're getting a gift for my mother, and we ended up in New York City at a bookstore. And there was a table there with all of the adults kind of like surrounding the table and just staring in awe at the table. And I'm the curious one, so I kind of like pushed my way through, and I was like, "What's going on?" Kind of got away from my father, and sitting on the table was the first Macintosh.
Cool.
Mouse, keyboard. I think it actually had like the paint program with the hello on the screen and everything, and it was on and it was running, and the adults were clearly terrified of this thing. Nobody would go near it. So I took one look at it and went, "Ooh," and ran in, grabbed the mouse, started banging on the keyboard, moving things around and clicking, and I may have caused a couple of heart attacks. There was lots of gasps. My father just about jumped on top of me.
No, don't touch it. Do you have any idea what that caused?
Exactly. He tells me that I had the thing like doing all sorts of stuff. I was opening programs and I was painting and I all sorts of craziness. And that was, I distinctly remember that. Now, if you look at the timelines, I can't, that didn't happen. That computer didn't come out at the same time that we were in the store for the thing that we were buying. So I don't exactly know, time gets weird and fuzzy, but I remember it distinctly.
Yeah.
So I was a geek all the way back then. My grandfather was an electrical engineer, or an electronics technician, or whatever term you want to use. So he had training. So he was sort of teaching me electronics. I like to take things apart, put them back together. So I was always tinkering with something. My room was full of, whatever electronic components I could get, putting things together, taking them apart. And I really got interested in programming computers and kind of what I wanted to do, and what I sort of was headed towards for the longest time was video game design. Writing engines, and so
something better than Pac-Man.
Yeah. So I took the couple of quote unquote open source games, like the old QBasic Gorillas game.
Mm-hmm.
We tore that apart, rebuilt it, and did things there. A lot of stuff was written in BASIC back then, for like the Commodore, so we could just load it up and kind of go in and start messing with the code and figure out what does what and how to change it. And so I was always going in there and changing things.
And there was no such thing as compiled BASIC, was there? It was all sort of parsed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interpreted language, so
yeah.
I don't think there's a compiled. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a way to do it, but
yeah,
as far as I know, there wasn't.
It never really occurred to me that the software I was probably using when I was early on in my computer, days, that was also running in BASIC. I could have been looking at the source code, and I don't know. I just never put that together, right? I'd written stuff in BASIC as well, but it just never occurred to me like I could be looking at, the code for these things I was playing.
This may have gotten me into trouble later on in life. That I knew that these things are in BASIC and you can mess with them.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what grade it was. 7th, 8th grade, maybe earlier, 5th, 6th grade. We had typing class. Yeah, I don't think these exist anymore, but we had a typing class.
I had typing class when I was in school too.
And the teacher was a hard ass. He would come in and everybody had to stand. You know, the computers are around the outside of the room, so he could walk around in the middle and look over everybody's shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
But when you came in for class, before you sat down to do anything, you had to stand with your hands out so that he could look at your fingernails and your
Make sure they weren't too long or whatever. Yeah.
And he would critique your your hands. You know, oh, you're chewing your fingers, you chew your nails, so you get a bad grade today, or your cuticles aren't taken care of, or your nails are too long, or it was crazy insane.
Sounds more like the dude had a hand fetish than a real typist.
Yeah, well, he had issues. I was not too fond of him. I could also out type most of the kids in the class, because at that point I had been using computers
yeah, right. You were familiar with the keyboard already.
So I don't remember. It wasn't like Mavis Beacon or anything. It was some typing program that they had.
Yeah, some kind of typing tutor app. Yeah.
I happened to know that it was written in BASIC, so I was like, huh. So I would break out of the program, drop into list the BASIC file, and I went through and I looked at it, and there were portions of the program that actually showed the graphics and did the other stuff, and then there were huge sections of the code that were it was basically just sets of variables, which was what you typed on the screen. And you could change that.
Oh.
So I changed a lot of that stuff and saved it back to disk. And it was cool because whatever I put in there, if you typed it correctly, you got full points for it.
Right.
So I went in and changed all sorts of stuff. I put nonsense in there. I put comments about the teacher and the school, and yeah. And every time we came in, we had a different disk because it was all on floppies. We'd had to load it off of a 5 1/4 inch and run it. And I would go in and mess with it and save it, put it back to disk, and then run it, jump back into the program so that I could, oh yeah, I'm typing.
Totally typing.
I'm typing like mad.
Can't you hear me typing?
Yeah. It's funny because none of that recorded score. I can't ever remember him. I remember going in, he'd check our fingernails, we'd sit down and we'd type all class. He never looked at scores. I don't know how he graded us, to be honest. But that was that, I was bored out of my mind. So I would screw with stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I could understand, right? I mean, it's typing. You already are at least kind of proficient in typing, probably more proficient than the rest of the class, right? So you're bored.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's exactly what led folks like us into tinkering with stuff, was boredom.
Yeah, I was kind of a touch typist. 2 fingers off I'd go like mad, and he insisted, fingers on the home row, and you got to type the way that he wants you to type, and blah blah blah. And then he would put he would come around and they tape papers over the keyboard so that you couldn't see your hands on the keys. He was kind of a pain. So I had fun in there. Let's see what else. Also had different school, I think. I moved around a lot when I was a kid. So one of the other schools, sort of the school I graduated from, actually, we had, just around the time that they started giving actual computer classes, beyond. So the intro to computer class was always like, this is a computer, and they spent. I happened to be in this class because they combined my programming class along with these guys. They spent 2 weeks teaching the kids how to turn a computer on, because it was a big monitor, and you've got the big box that's the computer, and you had to turn the monitor on first, and you had to wait 5 seconds because that has to warm up, and it pulls a lot of current. And if you turn the computer on at the same time, it'll cause a brownout on all this crazy tech. And I'm like, maybe, but not really. but you
Yeah,
do you,
right,
dude.
right.
So I listened to that for like 2 weeks, and then he was teaching them how to like get around in DOS and how to format a disk, and then how to load a program. And so this was supposed to, for me, this was supposed to be a C class. I was supposed to be learning C. But the intro kids, and they were probably fine, but the intro kids were such a handful for him that he didn't have time to teach us C. So it was kind of like, here's the compiler, go learn it on your own.
Right.
So I actually he handed us a boxed version of Borland C that I got to take home and mess around with. So I learned C on my own. And of course, I have to put these skills to work to figure out, like, is this stuff working? And at the time, he happened to be teaching kids how to format disks. So I may have written a Trojan.
Because you were bored, right? You weren't being malicious. You were just bored.
Oh no, I was absolutely being malicious. The guy, he was a pain. Like we're there and we're like, can you please teach us something? And he's like, I have to go teach them how to format a disk. And I'm like, fine. So and it at the same time, it was malicious to him, but it was also malicious to the kids we're screwing around with. So I wrote a small Trojan that would emulate the format command.
Yeah.
You insert the disk, you type all the commands and everything. And I put little things in there like, because he mentioned being able to format C and making sure that the right drive letter was on there and, yada, yada, yada. And so I wrote it so that when the kids tried to format something, it would pop up and say, do you want to format the C drive? And they, no. And, it would pop up a message like, never mind, I'm doing it anyway. But I never deleted any data.
Right.
I did a couple of things. So this is DOS. So I renamed the autoexec.bat and config.sys files.
Okay.
So now, of course, the computer won't boot. I then hid the entire root directory. I just, used a trib to make them all hidden.
A trib plus H.
Yep. And then I created a file
H.
called A.
I don't remember anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I created a file called A. Just the letter A.
A.
And I filled that file with the letter A until the hard drive was full.
So
and
this
I closed
was
the file.
This was more like the anti format. This was instead of emptying a disk, you're filling it.
Right. So then I closed the file, and I hid that one too.
Okay.
So now the computer won't boot.
The drive
and if you use a boot disk, if you use a boot disk, there's nothing on the C drive.
Nothing you can see.
The hard drive is full.
Unless you know how to look for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we surreptitiously stuck that on a couple of computers and then just watched the fireworks. So we had a number of computers that suddenly didn't work, and he would go around with Norton Ghost. I think it was Ghost.
Okay.
And that's what he would use because he would just ghost the machines. He's like, I'll just ghost the machines and fix them. And for whatever reason, Norton Ghost would take one look at the machine and go, hard drive's not big enough, and give up.
Oh, because it was full.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, so we knocked a couple of machines offline.
Oops.
So yeah, I learned Pascal. I think it was the year before the C class. I learned Pascal. I forget where we built in that. I think I built an MP3 database. No, not MP3. CD database. MP3 didn't exist yet.
Couldn't have been MP3 yet.
Yeah, I built a like a database to like keep track of all my CDs. And that was kind of it for that. I had they had electronics class there too. And I did 4 years of electronics plus, however much time I could sneak out of other classes and go in there.
Now, was this sort of like extra classes at a normal high school, or did you go to a technical high school?
No, this was just extra classes at a normal high school.
Wow, you had a better high school than I did. We had like quote unquote shop style classes that involved computers. Mm-hmm. And some of them were kind of modular, that you could learn a little more about a computer than just how to use a certain piece of software. Like there was a video editing one, and there was a audio, like an animation creation one. None of them were really like in-depth, like programming or anything like that. So I'm kind of jealous. I had to actually go to a technical high school, in order to get in depth with any of that stuff. And of course, at the time it was, you can't go to a technical high school. You'll never amount to anything because they don't teach you what you need to know to go out and get a real job. You're just going to be one of these tradesmen.
Yeah.
Like, okay, whatever.
We had so we had the computer class, which kind of the only reason I did 2 years in that is because, well, the first year I took Pascal, the second year I took C, and then over the summer the teacher had a heart attack and died.
Oh,
I'm sure that was not related to anything that I did in the class.
I hope not.
Yeah, the guy was he was up there, and he was he was stressed to the max already. So nothing that I did could have added to the amount of stress that the guy had already. And I forget what they did. Somebody else came in, but there was never any. There were no programming classes anymore, so it was kind of like meh, whatever.
Yeah.
We had we had a 4-year electronics class. I was really good friends with the teacher. So that it just like he kind of ramped it up every year. Do you remember the Hero? Do you remember Hero? What's the name of the company? I forget the name of the company, but the Hero robot, Hero 2000 specifically. It's like this little, almost like Dalek-sized robot that would kind of run around, has an arm on it.
Yeah.
We had one of those.
Okay.
We had one of those that I kind of saw in a closet. I think my first year, and I just pestered him until I could pull it out and start messing with it.
Can I make the robot do something? Can I play with the robot yet?
Yeah. So I had the first year. I guess there were problems with the arm, like manufacturing issues with the arm, and they had sent it away to get repaired, and it came back, and so they didn't have the arm on it. And then the following year, I finally convinced them to let me put the arm on. So then we had the thing running up and down the hall, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. There was I didn't write the code. I kind of copied the code from elsewhere, but there was code so that the robot could sit there and write letters on paper and all sorts of stuff. So we had that. So there was programming, there was electronics. We had a drafting class we could take. I was the last year. I think I was the last year where they actually put you at a drafting table and let you draft. Because that was the year that AutoCAD kind of became popular in education in general. So they started teaching AutoCAD after that.
I found the robot. Was it like the size of a photocopier? I think it had anyway.
A little bit smaller.
Made by Heathkit?
Yes, Heathkit. Yeah. Heathkit was the
Heathkit Hero 2000.
Yep, Heathkit was the best.
It looks so much like 80s or 90s robotics.
Yeah,
it looks like a Xerox photocopier with an arm on the front.
Heathkit had a catalog that, of course, the electronics teacher had.
Yeah.
That had kits for all sorts of stuff, and you'd buy the kit, and it would teach you. You have to solder it and put it together.
Uh-huh.
And there were things that were just blinky lights, and then there were like radios, and there were like gadgets to interfere with TVs, like all sorts of stuff. My parents stopped paying for things after a while because I had a lot of Heathkit stuff. So let's see, we had drafting, we had a wood shop, we had a metal shop, there was an automotive shop. So yeah, we kind of had a technical school built into the school.
You really
could
did.
just take whatever classes you want.
I had to leave our normal school to go to specialized school to get that kind of stuff. You lucked out. I don't know where that school was at, but you had a lot more options at your disposal than I did. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was fun. So that about that, JSCAR wants a link to the
Hero. I was trying to find like an actual like Wikipedia link or something, and then I got distracted. So let me look it up again.
So from there, that around that same time is when I discovered, so sort of towards the end of, I guess.
Here it is. I'll put a link in the chat and I'll add it to the notes. Anyway,
so
go ahead.
So around then is sort of when the internet started becoming a thing that might happen. So there was like rumblings of it. I was pretty active on bulletin board systems all over the damn place. My parents were thrilled with the phone bill every month. Thrilled. I downloaded everything. So I had the back when it was called Epic Mega Games. I had their full catalog.
Oh, I remember
think
Epic Mega Games. They did.
Yeah.
What was the name of that game?
Jazz Jackrabbit.
No, you had fighting robots. What was it called? It was
Oh.
like Mortal Kombat but with robots.
Yeah, it was oh, it's
It's
really
like Blood and
goofy name,
Steel
too.
or something. I forget what it was
No,
called.
no, no, it wasn't Blood and Steel. It was
I
oh,
got to
what
look
the hell
that
was the
up
name of
too.
yeah, just look up Epic Mega Games. It's on there. I forget the name. Yeah, they had all sorts of good stuff. I used to download all their games and play them. I downloaded Wolfenstein 3D from them because they originally that was kind of where I went to get the id games when they first came out too.
Yeah.
And I think I got Doom that way too.
Jazz Jackrabbit. Jill of the
Yeah.
Jungle.
Yeah, Jazz Jackrabbit was Cliff Blazinski's first game before he went on to more bigger, better games, and has since kind of retired. So yeah, I got to know some of those guys and chat with them, and of course, I wanted to be a game programmer, so I was chatting with them all over the place.
One Must
And
Fall. One Must Fall. 2097.
Yep,
That's what it
yeah,
was called.
that was what it was. And I got into
will be in the show notes.
I got into the news groups because the news group, or what was it before that? It was the UUCP stuff for the bulletin boards. But I got into that and started kind of trolling the news groups and reading the graphics.
You talking like
forums
FidoNet or something?
Yeah, kind of. All over the place. And then eventually, when I graduated, my parents had kind of split and my father went off to start we had started a bulletin board, which then turned into an ISP, which has turned into a web host and is still kind of sort of around.
Yeah.
So I did all that, and kind of tried to keep in touch with the video game people. Unfortunately, I was born on the wrong coast. So
Yeah.
it's different. It's different now, especially with the ability to like work remotely. That was not even a dream.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't
growing up.
You couldn't.
And I think there was I think Nordic Games was kind of the only. I think it was Nordic. They were kind of the only shop on the East Coast that was doing video games and that I was aware of. Everybody else was in either Texas or California, mostly in California.
Yeah.
So not really able to, even if I was able to do something, I wasn't really able to do anything. So I kind of drifted around a little bit and ended up working at an ISP because that was available. So when we built the bulletin board system, when we first hooked internet up to it, it was kind of. It wasn't like now where you just get a cable modem or whatever and you hook it up to it and off you go. This was you would dial into us and we would dial out to the internet.
Yep.
And there were it was like WinSock that ran on the bulletin board side, or a version of WinSock ran on the bulletin board side.
Did you run Major BBS or was it some other? Yeah, so
No,
it was like
it was Major.
World Sock or something they called it, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you would dial into the BBS. The BBS would then either dial out, or if they were lucky enough to have a fiber or cable connection, they would get you to the internet through that over a whopping like T1 or 500K.
Yeah, this would dial out to our local ISP where you would have a shell on a Solaris system.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to invoke the proper commands. So we had a big script set up to call out and invoke, and then every time it broke and fell over, it would restart it.
Yeah.
And I kind of poked around on there a little bit, sort of learning and figuring it out. Linux was out by then, so I had a copy of Slackware, which is I think I've shown before, is on my shelf over here. So I was messing around with Linux a little bit, and the geniuses that ran the ISP sent out email that said, "Hey, anybody found with Satan in their home directory or running Satan, the Satan tools will be permanently banned from the ISP." Blah 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 blah. So I immediately wrote back and said,
"What's that?
What's that?"
Can you get me a copy? I want to know.
Yeah, and Oh yeah, I sent the email, and then probably 5 minutes later, I had a copy, and I was poking around with that, trying to figure out what that was. Not using it on their system, of course, because they could never find
Never.
it. But
Yeah.
I started learning about things there about shadow files and how the password file works and everything else, and I started poking around their system because I'm like, oh, I'm on their system. I have access to everything. It's Unix. I can go all over the place.
Now the tool Satan. I want to go back for just a second. That was like
Yep.
a systems administrator toolkit. That wasn't necessarily
No, it was
bad
the
software, right?
systems administrator tool set for analyzing networks. I think is what it was.
Right, right. So like many
Yeah,
tools like that, it could be used for ill or for
yeah,
good, but it was built as a like an actual sysadmin's tool.
yeah. And then I forget who it was. Somebody else wrote another version of it and called it Santa.
Why not?
People were because people were very upset about it being called Satan.
Right, right. Didn't that
So
eventually become like Nmap or something? Like that
uh,
evolved into a tool that's still around today, if I remember correctly.
it
Maybe it
might
wasn't
have.
Nmap;
I
it was
don't know.
something else.
I
Anyway,
don't know.
sorry, I don't mean
Um,
to.
no, that's fine. So I poked around in their system and found out that Etsy Shadow didn't exist on their system. All their passwords are right in the Etsy password file, which was world readable.
Oops.
Well, I'm old enough now at this point to have a job, so I applied and got an interview and went in there and did my interview thing. And then when we're all done with it, I'm like, oh, by the way, you might want to know this.
Your password file is clear
Your
text.
password file is not shadowed, so all of your passwords they're not in clear text, but the password file is there, so you can crack passwords.
Right.
And the look I got was oh my god, I'm talking to a criminal. Like, great. I didn't get the job.
That's
However,
surprising.
I think it was like the same week or the next day or something. They sent out an email to everybody saying that you could no longer change your passwords. I don't understand what the whole purpose of this was. And I went, that's weird. Okay. Did they like why did they do that? And they disabled the ability to change your password. And I'm like, maybe they turned Shadow on or something. Although that's kind of a dumb way to do it. And I went and looked, and nope, Shadow, no Shadow yet. And it wasn't until a couple weeks later that they actually enabled the Etsy Shadow on it. I was like, at that point, I had the password file. I could do whatever I want with it.
Sure.
So like a little bit of backward security, but whatever. I ended up working for them a couple years later. More tour actually many years later I worked for them.
Now, was that the ISP that I worked for eventually merged or bought?
No.
Or were you hired working for the same ISP? Because you and I worked at the same ISP for a
Mm-hmm.
while. I didn't know if that was them.
No, technically I have worked for two ISPs and two telcos. Well, three ISPs if you count the one that I built.
Right.
So the ISP that you're talking about that got bought and merged and we ended up working at the same place, that they were different. They ran who was the I can't remember the name of the company. Who was the company that was trying to say that they owned Linux?
SCO, wasn't it?
SCO, yeah.
Yeah.
They ran SCO Unix
Okay.
in very weird ways. So when I got there, so I worked a couple odd jobs here and there. I worked, I did the McDonald's thing and the Burger King thing. I built computers for a guy, made all sorts of contacts with his suppliers, and when he eventually fired me because this is kind of my story. I get fired from everywhere.
Jason works in places and gets fired.
He ended up in jail. He ended up in jail later on because he was super crooked. But he had like warrants out for his arrest in the tri-state area. So I had taken all of his contacts for building stuff and kind of went and did it myself for a while. So I built computers, and then I went and worked for my first ISP after my own that my father and I built. I went and worked for the ISP that eventually got gobbled up by the place you bought. And
I didn't buy them.
that
The
company
ISP I
you work
worked for bought
yeah,
them.
merged or whatever you want to call it. So I worked for them for a couple of years. I did tech support. And while I was, let's see, did I go? Yeah, so while I was working there, I joined the military and went to basic and AIT and came back and worked for them some more. So I started in tech support, moved my way over into the NOC and then up to engineering. Basically became an engineer because when we got bought, they brought in all this weird new equipment that, we had to learn to use because they did things a little differently. It wasn't just IP routing. They used ATM.
Ooh. That's those things you get your money out of, right?
Yes. So we had money machines everywhere that were connecting the internet. And ATM sounded interesting to me because it was new and shiny and had blinky lights and there was fiber. And so I got into it and kind of just, shadowed the engineer that was supposed to be in charge of it for a couple of days until he kind of looked at me and went, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he kind of walked away and went, "Have fun." So I ended up being the head ATM engineer for the company.
So I got a question. Yes, 4 networks, 4 systems ATM, right? 4.
Yes.
Marconi,
yes.
then 4, wasn't it?
No, 4 and then Marconi.
Oh, it was the other way around? Okay.
Yeah, four systems was the original ATM that we used. They eventually got bought by Marconi. And if you look, it's hard to find the pictures now, but the 4 systems buildings that were somewhere down by Pittsburgh, the 4 systems buildings were really, really cool because they were all built to be like, they look like they're falling over. They got weird angles, and it was a really neat place. So we did the ATM stuff. I rebuilt I helped design the what ended up being the standard for the nodes all the nodes that we deployed.
Yeah, I remember that crazy mesh network that you were responsible for dealing with,
Yep.
which was like crazy resilient. It was pretty cool.
Multiple layers of redundancy. Yeah, there had to be. You could lose an entire node. That happens. But,
yeah.
In any given node, you had to lose like 3 or 4 pieces of equipment for the node to go down.
Yeah, so
like, completely.
While Jason was in engineering doing all the cool stuff, I was like basically a level below him where I was doing second level support. So like when an ATM link were to die or whatever, I was the guy that got alerted and had to like call Jason and say, "Hey, there's a link down," or whatever, right? So yeah.
Yeah, somewhere here. I don't see it. I forget where I put. Oh, there it is. Ugh. I've got training materials.
Yeah.
From Marconi.
Marconi. There you go.
This stupid box was like several $1,000s worth of training materials that I ended up having.
So of course you took it home with you when you got fired.
They got it for me. It was mine.
Yeah, right.
So I still have certificates from getting trained and everything else. So it was a ton of fun.
I'm putting links to this stuff in the show notes, folks. So I'm trying to keep up. Jay's car's being nice and putting a bunch in chat here too. So
we had a disagreement later on how things should work, and we parted ways. I like to say I don't quit companies; companies quit me.
That's a good way to look at it. They've had too much. They've had too much Jason, and they have to part ways.
I'm a little better at it now, but I get incredibly invested in the company I work for, like crazy invested.
I've seen it happen, folks. I've worked with him twice now, and this is not him blowing smoke up your butt. This is true.
It's not. It's never malicious. It's always, like I have very strong opinions about things, and I am also like, if you can convince me that I'm wrong, like, we're good. I'm fine. Like, I love having technical arguments. I've worked with several people that we could go into a room, we could start to the point where sometimes we were shouting, but it was all technical arguments, and we go out and have a beer afterwards and just celebrate that we figured the thing out. And it's a ton of fun. So I get very, very invested in a company, but when they start going and doing stupid things, I'm not quiet. I will tell them you're being stupid and point out why they're being stupid. And it
A lot
turns
of
out
employers don't like to
a
hear
lot,
that.
a lot of employers don't like that. Although one company I worked for, that's why I got hired, was because I would do that. But so I ended up leaving that company, and then I worked for, where did I go after that? Oh, that's when I worked for the telco. So I moved from there to a telco. I actually did a stint for my father for a little bit.
It was
Then I
two
worked for a telco.
telcos, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again,
One
I
got
had worked for
bought or
ISP.
changed or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked for the ISP. ISP got bought. So then I went to work for the telco. Telco got bought. So same thing. And unfortunately, the telco that bought us, Frontier, I'll go ahead and trash the shit out of them because they're horrible. They're bankrupt, and you know,
We were.
which is sad.
So when I told my story, I said I worked for a little web host. We were customers of Frontier, if I remember correctly.
And they were horrible.
Yeah, they weren't great.
So Frontier bought the telco I was working for. The telco I worked for. Let me see if I can explain. Since we're on a technical podcast, I'll just go ahead and explain this. So we would deploy DSL to customers, and so the head end piece of equipment that you use to deploy DSL is called a DSLAM. And we had, there's lots of different flavors of this, but we had basically two different flavors of DSLAM. We had one that was just this massive unit that had, I want to say, like 400, I think it was 400 subscribers you could put on it, somewhere around there. And the other unit was these little pizza box guys, which I believe were 24, either 12 or 24 subscribers. I think it was 24. And you would feed them, obviously, with different things. So the little units we would feed with T1s. So a T1 is a meg and a half of bandwidth.
Yep.
Our DSL that went out to customers, each customer was a 3 meg DSL line. It started out as 1.5, but eventually they upgraded to 3 meg. So when we put these out, they actually did statistical analysis on the DSLAMs and said, how much bandwidth do we actually have to put on this to cover, say, 24 users who are all at 3 meg of bandwidth? Because we could put two T1s in there and have 3 meg, but now you're sharing that over 24 people. How many, what is the ratio that you need?
Right.
And what we had figured out was that at the time, this is totally different now because you've got streaming and everything else, but at the time, you put the two T1s in there because you're offering 3 meg, and once you hit 12 subscribers, you add another T1. And it turned out to be like for every 12 subscribers that we had on there, if you added another T1, provided that you didn't have me or Nate on there eating up all the bandwidth,
downloading all of our liberated software.
Yes. then the time division multiplexing that they basically used to carve it up was sufficient, and nobody ever had a real problem. So when I joined the first telco, I joined as tech support, and they caught wind of the fact that I was a programmer, sort of. I did a ton of Perl coding for the previous job where Nate was working. I wrote a ton of stuff in Perl, a bunch of stuff in Bash, and so I had written a monitoring system. I helped write the ticketing system. And so they found out that I was a Perl programmer, probably mentioned in my interview. And one of the guys had written a PHP interface to talk to the DSLAMs, get information out of it, and display it. Basically I was second level tech support. This was kind of for the first level guys, so that they could get more information. And I mean, the whole idea was to script things in such a way so that they didn't have to tell the second level guys, so that we just didn't have to do stuff. So he sent that over to me. He's like, "Oh, you're a programmer. I'm not. Here, this is yours." So I learned PHP, and then I learned an ass load of information about DSLAMs. I actually wrote. I happened to be taking an online college thing, and I wrote my final paper on DSLAMs and testing and all sorts of stuff. So I learned TL. I think the language that the DSLAMs talked was called TL1, which is something that is used in telcos in general for a lot of different stuff. So I figured out how to kind of make the TL1 sing and get all sorts of information out of it, and wrote this huge system so that even more stuff that second level could do, we could just push it over to first level. So when they had a problem, they could look at it, and it was, here's your signal to noise ratio, here's your signal, like if it's red, click this button, right? Like you click the button and it would make some changes. So we did all that stuff, and eventually I got pulled over into engineering because I happened to know ATM. They used ATM. I happened to know routing. They used routing. So I got pulled into engineering and started doing things there. And then we got bought by Frontier. So remember when I said we would look at how much bandwidth customers are using and automatically add things to make sure that there was plenty of bandwidth.
That there was
for
enough
customers?
bandwidth, yeah.
Frontier didn't do that. Frontier would sell 6 meg DSL because it's faster than 3.
Sure.
And an awful lot of customers complaining about their 6 meg DSL and how slow it was and how they could never get 6 meg and all this other stuff. And so we started looking into it. I took the system that I had built for the first company, ported it over to start reading the stuff out of the second company, and we had this humongous database of all the information from everywhere across the U.S. because Frontier was sort of national. And yeah, we definitely saw the problem because we were able to. At this point, I had like a graphical interface on it where it would like show red for things that were like completely overloaded. And we pointed out to them, like, you're selling 6 meg DSL here. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, you're feeding that DSLAM with a single T1. They're like, okay. You can't get 6 meg over a single T1, so you're not actually giving them 6 meg. And the answer we got back was, we guarantee 6 meg between the customer and the DSLAM. And I went, I'm in the wrong place.
Which is pretty much useless as far as selling 6 meg service. Wow.
Yep. I guarantee that you can do 10 meg on this piece of wire between your computer and the cable modem on the wall.
Right.
And after that, you're at the mercy of, whatever bandwidth we assign to you.
No. It's not whatever bandwidth that they've assigned. It's internet traffic. It's the traffic on the internet. It's not. Yeah. They've totally engineered it enough to guarantee you connectivity. But it is what it is. People, the internet's popular. You don't understand how popular the internet is.
When Frontier bought our company, we had the most advanced networking and switching gear on the telco side in the entire company, because the telco gear was like these Nortel switches. DMS 100s, I think, is what we had. And they weren't old, but we kept them up to date, but they weren't the brand new craziness. And Frontier ran most of their equipment, most of their network on DMS 1s, which were so out of date that Nortel didn't support them anymore. Nortel didn't update the firmware anymore. Oh, and by the way, remember that bill that went through that changed the daylight savings time when it moved from wherever it was and shortened? Yeah, so that code wasn't in there either. So the poor switch guys had to stay up 4 times a year to undo the automatic switch and then redo the switch when it was supposed to happen, and got creamed every time, screamed at and yelled up, down, left, and right, because when they did it, because it was being done manually, I guess the way they did it, they lost the call records, which ended up being a good chunk of money every time.
Yeah. Well, maybe save that money and put it into upgrading your switches.
No. Frontier was one of those companies that bought a lot of stuff, cut as much spending as humanly possible, put it into trying to get the most share price out of it that they could, and make the most profit they could, and screw everything else.
And that's really the problem with the way business works.
Yeah.
Right? So you just outlined it right there. You were for a company that did a great job of investing in their infrastructure, and because of that provided great service to their customers. They were bought by a company that didn't do any of that, but instead put a bunch of money into probably things like promotion and return on investment. Right.
And making really stupid decisions.
So shareholders were happy. They had an influx of customers because they had good promotions or whatever, right? So they had more money, but they weren't better service.
No, they bought their customers, and if you remember, I mean, everybody has a cell phone now.
Right.
But at the time, cell phones were relatively new and expensive, so not everybody has a cell phone. You needed to have a telephone.
Right.
Who do you go for telephone service? You can choose between
your local telco and your local telco.
Exactly. So because it was a monopoly, they had customers. Period.
Right.
Then there was no way these customers couldn't go anywhere. So shortly before I actually quit this job, I didn't get fired.
Whoa.
And my boss actually had contacted me multiple times since I left, trying to get me to come back. Not anymore. He's trying to get out of there now too. I think he's out. But right before I left, there was some rumblings about some new deal they were doing with Verizon. They were going to get all these customers and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't find out the details of what really happened until after. Verizon had all of these very, very rural areas. And if you're a telco, rural areas are difficult to deal with because it's a ton of copper you have to lay.
Yeah. For not a lot of customers. Yeah. Yep.
For very few customers. Oh, and by the way, it's your area. You are legally obligated to do this. Now, mind you, and I'll shy away from the politics on a lot of it, but
that's surprising.
It's not like it's not like they don't get a good deal doing this. They get a ton of money federally to do this.
Yeah.
So they complain and whine and cry about having to do this and how much it costs, but they're getting paid way more than it actually costs them to do this, to have that responsibility.
Right.
So Verizon packed all of this rural stuff up and created a company called Spinco. Took Spinco, put a negative, the number I think was like $3 billion. They put like a negative $3 billion entry on their financial sheets or whatever.
Yeah.
So when Frontier got this company, the company was already at a $3 billion loss, and then proceeded to sell it to Frontier for some ridiculous amount of stock in Frontier. And as part of that deal, those customers also had the Verizon Fios TV service that Verizon ran.
Yeah.
Which came with all of the different channels and everything. So a year after this happens, Frontier is now in charge of all this, and they go back to, all of the contracts and everything with the TV providers are up, and Frontier goes back and says, okay, we got to renew these contracts, and the TV providers go, fresh meat, sure, 10 times the price. And Frontier has there's nothing they can do because they have customers that have multi-year contracts with this stuff. So Verizon ends up raising the price of this by like fourfold for all the customers, and there's like nothing they can do. So all sorts of crazy nonsense. So I got out of there before all that and joined you at the college.
Yeah.
So somebody that I had worked with at the ISP prior to that.
Yep.
Now worked at the college and had called me. He called me when I first hit the telco. And tried to get me to come over, and I was like, well, I just got this new job, and I want to see where it goes. And he called me again when we first got bought out, and I was like, oh, new company, lots of cool new stuff. I want to see where this goes. And then finally, I called him back like a year or two later, and
please get me out.
I'm like, if that offer's still open, he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm on my way.
I'll be over this afternoon.
So I went and did the college thing for a while. We had a lot of fun there. Rebuilt the network, did all sorts of crazy stuff.
I miss those days. I really do miss those days. We had so much fun at that college.
Yeah, till things started to change.
Working for great people, doing interesting things, working for people that understood technology. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. We were like a bunch of hackers that were handed a budget. It was great.
Yeah, yeah. Here's a budget. We need this thing. We should go to the cloud, right? No, we can build that.
No, we can do that. We can do that
And
on
here's
prem.
why: if we do it, it's better. And
Yep,
we did. I think we did a lot of really, really cool stuff.
we did. We did.
Right up until the end, when the new guy
Well,
came in, and
right up until all of those smart hacker people either went on to bigger and better things, or, like unfortunately happened to you, got fired because you were too vocal about doing the right thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So again,
Sorry, I didn't want to shortcut
unemployed.
the story there.
No. That's where I was headed.
Surprise! Jason got fired.
So I helped hire. I helped hire and fought for the guy to get hired,
Yes.
and the guy ended up firing me. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that was a bad choice.
no good deed goes unpunished.
That was a bad choice on both of our parts. We both stood up for him, and he's part of the reason I left there too. Not that I didn't go to a job that was like a freaking dream job, but whatever.
Yeah. So well, I did too. I ended up. So I was finishing. I took classes while I was there. I burnt myself out mathematically. I took Calc 1, then Calc 2, then Calc 3. Then I took linear algebra, and then I took statistics, and went what? And then I went on and said, okay. And one of the professors that I interacted with convinced me to take a theater class. Fortunately, did not include me acting, because that would have been a disaster.
That would have been bad, right?
That was a ton of fun. So I was there for class, and I ran into an acquaintance of ours.
Yep.
And I was talking to he was chatting with one of the comp sci professors, and the comp sci professor, he knew me and he knew everything that happened. So he kind of looked at me. He's like, "So, did you find a job? Any prospects?" And I'm like, I've got some interviews and I've been talking to people, but no, I haven't really found anything." And this guy looks at me and goes, "What are you looking for?" And I was like, "Well, I was a network engineer for about 25 years, so I've done all that. Things are kind of changing. I've done systems as well for that basically the same amount of time, because I don't think you can run a network unless you have systems behind it. And I never had a systems until the college. I never really had a systems department that would do stuff for us.
Some network folks don't touch systems, and some systems folks don't touch networks. I've run into quite a few people there's a very sharp divide there, but you and I are different than that.
Yeah, with the first ISP, after we got bought, there was a systems department, but they hated.
Oh yeah, there was
the engineering department.
There was like a freaking
there was like
DMZ
a blood feud.
between the two of you.
Yeah. So I couldn't, we needed stuff, and I still don't really understand what the big deal was, but I needed stuff, and they wouldn't have anything to do with us. So
there was
like,
a hard divide there. The systems folks there were they were very much focused on, and I don't even know where the divide was. It was like, anything network needed? No, we can't touch that. That's their problem.
And engineering.
We have an ISP to run. I'm like, well, doesn't that run the ISP too? Well, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't run that part of the ISP. It's like the customer-facing stuff they wanted. They had to deal with, but not the infrastructure stuff. It was weird. I don't know why it was like that.
Yeah. So I had always built my own system stuff, because okay, fine, you don't want to do it, I'll do it myself. I don't care. I know how to do this.
Right.
So we had built our own. So when I was talking to this guy, I'm like, network is, by title, networking was what I've done for 20 plus years. But, every one of those positions, I've done systems as well, because I've done programming and because I need to monitor my systems. So I
don't know if you can hear me, Jason, but all of a sudden I can't hear you.
Oh,
okay. There you
That's
are.
because I must have bumped my keyboard.
Oh, for a second I thought it was bandwidth, but okay.
So I went, I told this guy, systems and networking, and he's like, "Oh, I've got something for you. I'll call you tomorrow." Like, okay. So he calls the next day and he talks to me. He's like, "So I'm working with a startup, and this is what they're doing." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, talk to this guy and he'll interview you, and we'll see where we go from there. So I called the guy and talked to him, and he kind of quizzed me a little bit and was asking about this, that, and the next thing. It was a Bitcoin startup. Mm-hmm. And I because he had mentioned that it was a Bitcoin startup the day before, I, Googled the hell out of it, and I'm like, "What's Bitcoin?" So I kind of poked around a little bit. and got sort of the gist of it. But that didn't matter because it was system stuff that they were interested in. So we talked for a little while, and he's like, "Yeah, you'll do." And so they brought me in. So I spent the first week or two kind of going through the systems and figuring out where things needed to be. They got introduced to everything, and I started building everything together. And this guy who had been running all their systems looked at me about 2 weeks in and says, "Yep, you've got this," and disappeared. He just left. He went and started his own thing.
Just
And I was
like
like,
that.
oh, okay. So I kind of became the de facto DevOps guy because DevOps was a word by then. So I started building the systems, and a week or two later, I was trying to figure out, like, I hadn't seen the guy, he hadn't logged in, so he got all of his accounts deleted, and I shut everything down for him because at that point he's not doing anything any longer, so he doesn't need accounts, and for security reasons, we don't want to have that happen, have him in the system. So pulled him out. And kind of ran from there. And it was funny because later on, we were talking, and he kind of went, "Yeah, I knew you were definitely the right guy, and that I hired the right person because I came back one day and tried to log in, and my accounts were gone." And I was like, "Well, you disappeared." He's like, "Yeah, I know, but that was the right thing to do." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I ran the entire thing. We pivoted a couple times.
So
and,
it was
and
like
did
a
different
test?
things.
Is that what?
Yeah, I don't know. He was weird. He's a weird guy. So I ran things there. It was data center to start. We were going to be a Bitcoin exchange to start. That changed because the whole VC capital system changed and Bitcoin became a bad word. So we weren't doing blockchain anymore. Now we were something else. Ran through that for a while. Pivoted off of that. Ended up moving everything to the cloud. Ran it there for a while. We ballooned far too quick, far too big, and far too quick. And then the company basically blew itself apart. And from there, I went on to another DevOps position with a technology company that was firmly rooted in the '90s. So that was
But
an interesting
DevOps,
one.
It's rooted in the 90s, but
Yeah,
DevOps
it
is the
was
thing, so you have
yeah,
to do DevOps. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of '90s centric thinking on what they're doing, but they wanted to do things the agile DevOps way, and fought against it all day long.
Agile monoliths? Is that what we're...
Yeah, something like that. So I moved on from there. So let's see. The startup blew itself apart. So I didn't actually. Depends on how you look at it. Technically, I got fired because they let everybody go, but technically it blew itself apart, so I didn't get fired. So maybe we're gonna call that one a wash.
Yeah, okay, that one's a wash. If you're keeping
And then
score...
then the next company I actually quit. So to be where I am now. Somebody that I worked with at the startup had reached out and was like, "Hey, we need you here. Please come here and DevOps stuff for us." So now I'm with this new company, and they're an old company, so there's a lot of old tech. They're surprisingly secure for old tech, and there's a lot of curmudgeony old, like, we do things this way because this is the way we've always done them.
Right.
So there's a little bit of, you kind of run into that everywhere. I've already been bought. So we're merging with another company already. This is like my life story.
Yeah, right?
And the new company is, they're very, they're much more modern. They're cloud, they're using cloud. They have data centers, but they're cloud based. They're doing things in containers. They're DevOps. They're automating things. So it's a lot of fun. I'm actually having a ton of fun there. I have far. I mean, I need to hire like a dozen people to be able to do all the stuff that I need to do. Not that I'm hiring. We're not actually have any ability to hire, but I am a manager of
You
myself.
need to hire.
Yes,
You need to hire, but you can't hire. That's like the story of business, right?
I am a manager in title only. The eventuality is the way that it was sort of sold to me is eventually I will have a team, but I need to get things off the ground and get things
Sure.
rolling, which is fine. Like it's easier to just go and do things. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm getting pulled in different directions. So I'm a project manager, I'm a DevOps guy, I'm kind of security, probably because I open my mouth and say things. So like I'm all over the place.
Like de
But
facto
it's been
security
fun.
because there isn't one already.
Oh no, there's well, see now we're merging. So this is the fun part. So because it was the company I was with was bought by another company and now it's merging, like the whole title thing gets really weird. So I
Yeah.
have multiple CTOs, multiple CISOs, I have four bosses, like there's like five CEOs. Like
Do the
guys,
bosses
like
talk
this,
to each other though? Because that's the key.
my bosses, yeah. Yeah.
That's what I
Mostly
mean.
because I keep them I'm very, if nothing else, I am very vocal and keep them informed of what's going on. So
It's not a bad thing.
unless like there's certain things that happen on one side of the fence that have absolutely nothing to do with the other side, and I don't bother informing unless I'm pulled away from something. So that I won't drag over to the other side because
Yeah.
there's no context.
There's no reason
But,
for it.
when I'm
Right.
doing something that affects both of them, like yeah, they're all aware.
Good.
So I technically report to a single person, but I actually have four people that I report
Right.
to in general.
So how long till we get
So-
to pull you into Red Hat? Because I've only tried
Red Hat?
twice. You keep
I know.
not
Red Hat. I will. So I'll be blunt and honest. Red Hat is super interesting, and it would be really cool to work there. And I'm expensive.
right. You got to find the position
And
that
I don't-
fits
I
that fits
don't-
your
yeah,
current
I don't-
lifestyle.
I don't mean to say that to be like.
You're not full of yourself. It's
Like,
but
yeah,
it's
I'm
it's a
not like-
reality, right? You've moved up,
It's-
right? You now have manager in your title. I'm assuming, which comes with a paycheck, right?
Well, there's that. It's a finance company, so finance
Yeah.
companies just pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
For
Yeah. So
you know.
to move to a new position, you'd have to, right? I get it. I mean, a salary is one of those things, right? It's like
I will point out, it is not out of the question by any means. I have taken a pay cut several times
Yeah.
in my career because, for various reasons, you know, in the majority of them, it was where I am is horrible,
yeah,
and this new place really has something going for it, and I think it's a place I can grow. And I took a pay cut to go there, and ended
Okay,
up
so-
making more later on.
So what
like,
you're saying is, I need to pay attention to when I notice that you're disgruntled again, and then
Yes.
send you a referral.
Yes.
Okay.
yes, when I'm no longer grumbled, that is the way to do it. Yeah, no, I
Hopefully, your employer doesn't listen to the podcast.
yeah, and I mean, J Scar is, you know what you're worth. Like,
Yeah. Right.
yeah, yes and no. I'm not greedy by any stretch. Like, I have not. So the startup that I worked at was a New York-based financial startup. I made good money there, and by the end of it, I was making really good money.
But then it
And-
imploded, right? So it's
and like, the reason I made really good money by the time it was over and done with was because I had several people there who were looking out for me and pushing for me to get raises, because I was managing multiple people who made a lot more than I did,
right.
because I was there for the experience, the fun. Like, I was excited about what was going on. Yes, I had equity in the company, and that was always fun. I was a millionaire for a short period of time. I had equity on paper. I had equity in the company, and hopefully that would turn into something great. But like day to day, I was making a modest salary, like a decent salary. But like for New York, I was making nothing, right? Like,
Right.
I was making a crap salary for New York, and I didn't care. And it came up a couple times when I was hiring people. I'd put somebody in to get hired, and I had the CFO, like, he pulled me aside. He's like, I can't hire this person. I'm like, why not? It's like, are they too expensive? He's like, they're gonna make more than you. And I was like, so I need that.
Yeah,
They
I
live
mean,
in New
like,
York.
if your needs are being met and
Right,
you're having
they-
a good time, the salary's
live in
not
New
as
York.
important, right? Like,
Right.
that's
They
the
live in
important
a
thing.
New York apartment, which costs more than my mortgage.
Right.
So, they need to have this much money. I'm fine, dude. Like, we're good. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, I can't. I'm like, just I need the people. Like, you're hurting me more by not hiring a person than you are by trying to
Just
protect
that's
me by
you
not,
just gotta you gotta pitch it
Like
as
if it's
you're paying me insanity.
yeah, yeah. It turned out to be like one of those like, okay, if it's gonna make you feel better and be able to hire this guy, then go ahead and give me a raise. But
Right.
just realize I'm not
Right.
asking for a raise.
Right. Right.
Which like a lot of people think is stupid, right? Like, yes,
Oh yeah,
I
because
was
a lot
I
of
was
people are driven
definitely underpaid there.
100% by salary, right?
Yeah,
And some people never realize in their career that it's not all about the money, it's about your enjoyment, right? And being paid for
right.
your enjoyment is important,
Yeah,
but you don't need a ridiculous salary. You need your needs met. Is really what it comes down to, right? Like
yeah.
no one's gonna be upset for getting a lot of money, right? But on the other hand, you shouldn't necessarily stress over that unless your needs are not being met.
Right, right. I mean, I am clearly a privileged person. I have been privileged my whole life by my own standards. I'm not eating off of silver spoons or whatever, but like,
Right.
I have sort of fallen
But
into
you haven't lived under a
things. Yeah,
bridge at any point in your life either, right? So yeah. Or have you?
I've been close. I've been close. There. So when I worked at the ISP, the first ISP I worked at,
Mm-hmm.
I had moved out on my own. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would not, I would not say I was poor, right? Like I've met people who are like super poor that are like way
Right.
better people than I am,
Right.
and have done way more and been in way worse situations. But I was living in a bad part of town. We went out to see the fireworks one night, try to figure out where the fireworks are going off, and only to find out the next day that those were not fireworks. That was a full-on gun battle between drug lords and police. So all of
That's
those
fun.
pop pop pops, that was automatic gunfire.
Nice.
So there were times when I had nothing to my name, no money, whatever. I could always fall back on my parents, but I was out on my own, so I kind of tried not to.
Yep. Yep.
But I would never say that I was, even then I was privileged enough to have a way to fall back if I had to. So it was one of those like I don't know. I liked what I did. And there have been positions that I have fought for a higher wage because I didn't think I was getting paid what it was worth. And I've learned a little bit since then, and like any job that I take now, I want to make sure that I'm getting my fair share out of it, if you will. So I would not take, I'll take a pay cut as long as I know something else is coming along the way, but I wouldn't go to like a pittance for doing like some of the work that I do, because that's crazy. So I don't know. It's sort of person to person. I've been lucky. I've been super lucky. My whole life, I have fallen from job to job. Even coming home after getting fired. I've I came home from getting fired from that ISP job. My wife looked at me and went, "You got fired, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." I feel so great now. Like I was so happy because I was coming home with like I had stomach cramps, and I was
Oh
well
yeah.
on my way to an ulcer.
I
I was
know.
stressed out.
That's how I was when I worked for that little web host, and
Yeah.
almost how I was when I was at the college by the end. Right? Like I came home feeling not so happy. I know the
That
feeling.
that one is as good as I felt afterwards. And again, the reasoning was like the stress level and the crap that I was dealing with at work was just insane. But that one probably scared me the most, because at that
Yeah.
point I had a newborn, I had a wife and kid, and I had a house that I was paying for. So it was like one of those like I feel really good, but shit, what do I do now? Like, I need to do something.
Yeah. Right.
And it took like my wife is amazing, absolutely amazing. It took my wife to look at me and say, "You go sign up for unemployment, dumbass." And I was like, "But only losers go on unemployment." Like
Well, no.
it's
So
this
there's a
weird.
reason. There's a reason that exists, right?
I
Like the
understand
real
that.
reason that exists is for people who lost their job by no
Right.
fault of their own, right?
So she
That's
she sort of had to explain this to me, like explain like I'm five.
like a child. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, I can't go on unemployment. That would be admitting defeat. I would be a loser. Like only idiots do that. Like that's for people. That's for it was one of those like elitist view type things.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
honestly, to me, unemployment was like for somebody who just wasn't worth getting a job. Like you're just such a loser, you can't get
Well,
a
I mean,
job.
that's unfortunately the way society looks at it today.
Exactly.
And there
Exactly.
are absolutely people that milk it that way, right? And I can
Yep, I
understand
would
why
mix
you
a
have
couple of
that
them.
viewpoint, right? But
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
those programs are designed exactly for the situation you were in, right?
yeah, so she sort of explained, like, she's like, you pay into that. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you pay into unemployment with every paycheck. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So we pulled out a paycheck and we looked at it. I'm like, oh, I pay into
I
that.
was completely unaware.
Well, like, so if I go on unemployment, I'm just getting back the
Just
money that I've
getting
already
back
paid into
money
it. She's
I've
like,
given to
yeah.
the government.
I'm like,
this
oh,
is great.
I
I'm going to
feel-
go on unemployment more often.
I feel so much better now. Yeah. So that, that sort of helped me through that, and
Yeah.
I was able to find something shortly after. So
Good. That's good.
and I made sure, like, and that's one of the things, like, when I looked at my kids, I'm like, you're working, you're paying unemployment. So if you lose your job,
Yeah, right,
go
right.
on
So that's
unemployment. So when,
one of those life lessons, right?
when COVID hit, two of my kids, my youngest, basically, he was kind of like, the job he had, yes, technically paid unemployment, but he was not eligible for unemployment. But my other two guys, they both had full-time jobs, and they had been working, and they lost their jobs because of COVID.
Yeah.
Not they were able to go back to the jobs. They, it wasn't like they got booted out, but because of the downturn,
Just
and
in those industries that were hit hard by COVID, yeah.
Yeah, so they were able to take advantage of it. And, I talked to them both. I'm like, look, like, just, so that you don't go through the same thing I went through, like, you paid into this. Like, this is your money.
Right.
You paid into
Right.
this.
I mean, the real key there is that when you're able to work again, you go back to work.
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, you have used the system for what it was designed for, and you're not abusing it, right? So that's the key,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The fun part about my first unemployment experience is that it did not work like that. It was not sign up for it and get it. I had to fight. I actually had to go to
Yeah,
court.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep. But I
That's because, well, I mean, sure you're aware of this, but basically the employer that you left can basically argue and say no.
Yeah.
They don't deserve unemployment.
Yeah, they argued that they fired me for cause.
Right.
And I said, okay.
And I think
disagree.
I think that employer actually pays part of your unemployment, and that's why
Yes.
they're motivated to go back and fight against it.
Yep. Yeah, and then it went to, I mean, it wasn't technically court, it's arbitration. But then it went to arbitration, and I had to, I went and learned about arbitration, and actually hired myself a lawyer.
That's the key,
best
right?
Best $100 I've ever spent.
Is that all it cost you?
Yeah, dude, cost me $100.
That's a bargain,
Yeah.
right? $100
It
bucks,
was, 'cause he was-
$100 and you get unemployment for 6 months or something. Yeah.
He agreed to he was like, $100, I'll represent you, not a big deal, because he went into it thinking like, oh, this is just a normal unemployment case.
Yeah. Then he realized
this
your
is
previous
me we're talking
employer.
about.
Then he realized your previous
what-
employer were a bunch of assholes that didn't want
Yeah.
you to get unemployment.
So one of the things that you do for arbitration is you get to submit evidence. So let this be a lesson to everybody. When you fire somebody, cut off their access. Because my email access stayed in place for several days. So I downloaded all of my email and correspondence. I had everything. I submitted in excess of 200 pages of evidence.
And your lawyer's like,
point-
this is not worth the $100.
The lawyer didn't know until I got there. The lawyer had no idea until he showed up for arbitration, and he was given the paperwork and everything. And the arbitrator actually looked at us and said, "We have to." So the way it works is a piece of evidence comes out, it's presented, and then both sides give whatever objections they have to it, and then you decide whether it's going to go into evidence or not. He's like, we will be here for like 6 or 8 hours just to go through this evidence.
Right.
Can we please just, if you have something that you want to check into evidence, we will do it when you check it into evidence. And I was like, okay, sure.
Sure, why
So
not?
my arbitration, so this guy came in and there was this whole big thing about this is a 15-minute thing. It's not a big deal. 4 hours later, 4 hours later, we finally left, and I kicked myself because I realized after we left that because they brought in, I had me and my $100 lawyer, they brought in the director of engineering, the VP of human resources, the and the
And the company,
council,
the company had a lawyer on staff.
the company
if I remember
lawyer.
correctly, yeah.
There might have been a fourth person, but I don't remember. So they they brought all the heavy hitters,
Yeah.
and they presented a bunch of stuff, and I presented a bunch of stuff, and after I left, I was kicking myself. Like I was out talking to the lawyer, and it just dawned on me, and I looked at him, I said, "Oh shit!" He's like, "What do you mean? What's wrong?" I went, that last piece of paper that they brought out, that was fabricated. He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, that piece of paper was signed by the general manager. He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, he wasn't the general manager at that time
Right.
that it was signed.
Because they were changing roles and stuff, and yeah.
He's like, "Well, it's too late now, but don't worry about it. I think we got a case." So I ended up winning the arbitration, which I put a lot of effort into.
Yeah, right. So I don't want to cut you off with your story, but we have been at this for almost an hour and a half.
Yep. So
I do have one last thing that listeners that have been listening since the beginning, since we made such a big deal about your Twitter handle in the beginning, if you remember, about how it's spelled and whatever. Where did it come from? Like, what made you come up with that name?
I kind of came up with it. It was the BBS days. We were hanging with a bunch of different people, and I needed something kind of just different than other people. And I was into fighting games and aliens and all sorts of stuff, and I just kind of merged things together. So Xenophage is it's aliens. This is the Xeno part, and phage is like kind of fighting. I did not know the biology context of it back then, but it was just alien fighting. So kind of like a I threw it together, and I've had it ever since.
Cool. I never knew what your handle was until Twitter. Right?
Yeah,
I never really asked why where that came from.
I had a previous handle back when I started things, because when I was younger, I was a big I don't know if you believe this or not, but I was a huge religious nerd, big Bible thumper. I've grown out of that.
I know you've changed, but
yes. So my handle back then was related to that, and I've since given that up very heavily. And I moved to this, and this is where I've been for 30 years.
Yeah,
probably been 30 probably over 30 years now. So,
all right. Well, hey, whatever. I was just curious. All right. So, did you have any final words before I sort of close up this section? Does it sound like you were about to say something before I cut you off?
No, I mean, the initial question was that launched all this off was were you always a nerd and or did you grow into this? And I've been a nerd forever.
Yeah.
I was picked on relentlessly because I was a nerd forever.
Weren't we all?
And now
maybe nerds nowadays aren't. I don't know. I guess I'll
now
find out
I own those people.
Yeah, right. Now I have control over them. That's why. I've always had this concept that the reason that nerds become sysadmins is because now they have power.
Yeah, geeks. What is it? Geeks will inherit the earth.
Yeah, right.
Was that Dr. O or was that Stevenson? I forget.
Yeah, Dr. O wrote that short series called "When Sysadmins Ruled the Earth."
Yes.
About the end of the world, and the only people that survived were people that were in data centers. Yeah.
Yep. I have.
Great.
That's me.
Great little short series. If anybody's interested, we'll have to find the link for it and throw it into the notes. When Sysadmins Ruled the Earth by Cory Doctorow. Good stuff. Cory Doctorow does a bunch of cool stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 5% of Attack Surface left to read.
Okay. I don't think I've read that one.
Which if you're not aware, that is book 3 of the Little Brother series.
Oh, okay. I did the audiobooks for the first and second books, which were very good.
So the third book is all from Masha's view.
Oh. And
it's very different from the first two because this book is because Masha has always been an enemy in the basically an enemy in the first 2 books.
Yep.
So in the 3rd book, it's all from her side of the fence, and there's a whole arc that's going on with her. Throughout the entire arc is all the flashbacks of what happened during the first 2 books. And it's really interesting.
Sorry, I'm trying to read what's in chat right now, and it's all about dyslexic, so it's hard to read. Anyway, all right.
I'm confused.
I
don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I don't know either. So we're going to end this part of the show, folks. So if you remember from last show, we're starting to cut the show into 2 segments. So this is the end of segment 1. If you want to hear about strange radio noise from space and let's see, the German government spying on people, and let's see what else we got coming up in the news. CentOS or Rocky Linux becoming their a company essentially to sell support. Those are all things we're going to talk about in the news in the next part of the show. So please, if you didn't think you were going to listen to the second half of the show, take the time. It should be fun. If you don't listen to the second half of the show and you want to watch us live sometime, you can check us out on Twitch and on YouTube. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. If you want to hear the full outro, you'll just have to listen to the second half of the show. I'm not going to bore you with it twice. So we will be back in a few minutes if you're here for the live stream. And as soon as I find the waiting page here, here it is.
Little to the left.
Yeah, no, it's right here. All right, so we'll be back in a few, and hope you stick with us. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. And we're back. Welcome back. If you haven't listened to the first part of the show, you should go back and listen to all of Jason's story about how he got into IT and all that. I know you're really like, that was a good story, man. It was.
Okay, if you say so.
I mean, whatever.
I don't know why anybody wants to hear that.
It's people are interested because we have established IT careers. People are interested in how we got to where we are, so that's why they wanted to hear it.
The nerd nerded.
The nerd nerded. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Valid.
That's what I'm going with. The nerd nerded.
Is that like the short story of Jason? The nerd nerded?
Yeah, I was gonna say like, when I get into it, I was just gonna say like, I was a nerd when I was a kid, and I'm a nerd now, so
The nerd nerded and has thus far succeeded in nerding. Nerdery.
And now the news.
And now the news. All right, so let's move along. First of all, we have our usual announcements. Patron update. We gained a new patron in the past 2 weeks. So cool. Thank you to NamePending197, who's in
Hopefully you get your name soon.
Who's in our Discord. So thank you. I've chatted with them before. Cool stuff.
Although being 197th in line, like, probably could take a while. So.
Yeah, right. Name pending 197, 197th in queue, or are there 197 people with the name pending? That seems unlikely.
I don't know.
But whatever. There's a story there. There must be a story behind that number. So anyway, name pending 197. Jeremy with some accents over the e's. I'm probably mispronouncing that. It's probably some weird phonetic something or other of the word Jeremy. Jeremiah. I don't know. Jeremy. Okay. Aranami, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, Matt, David, Solemn with a 3 and a 0. Trooper-ish, Linux666, Gimpy B, Mark with a K, Dementor, or The Mentor if you're in our Discord, John the Nice Guy, Mark with a C, Julius, Andy, Jay, Charles, and our good old buddy 22532. Thank you all for being patrons. We're getting I think it's like $98 a month now. So that's pretty cool. That covers things like what we pay for Riverside now to do our recordings, what we pay for hosting, what we pay for, Libsyn, a few other things. So that's great. That's great. Very appreciative of all of you for choosing to give us money to do this, which is great.
You like money, even though I don't see any of it.
I keep offering to give you something, and you keep saying no. So, don't tell me that.
Don't tell them that.
Oh, okay. If you guys want to pay Jason, let me know. All right. If you want to support the show and get a T-shirt or something instead of a recurring sort of money into nowhere sort of thing, you can go ahead and do that at Teespring. Teespring.com/stores/Iron Sysadmin. And a new thing I've added to the notes, since we're using Riverside now, they have an affiliate program. If you run your own show, or if you run a podcast or something where you want to get really like cool quality recordings, like we do for this show, you can get Riverside, and using our affiliate link, we get a little bit of a kickback for that. So if you want to do that, there's a ridiculously long link that I'm not going to read in the show notes. If you go and you click that and you sign up for Riverside, we get a little bit of money out of that. So, if you want to do that and help the show out, great. Riverside has been a fun, or I shouldn't say fun, it's been a functional and good platform, right? It's pretty cool stuff. So, yeah, you usually put in an announcement here about B-Sides Delaware, and I know that's coming up. You want to let us know what the dates are?
B-Sides Delaware, the 12th and 13th of November. It's the Friday and Saturday. I keep screwing up the dates. Registration's open. CFP is open. If you'd like to speak, let us know. We want to hear your talk. If your talk is not security related, we want to hear your talk. If your talk is security related, we want to hear your talk. It's family friendly. We're going to be virtual, so we're interested in talks from all walks of life.
You're like the only conference that did not jump right back into the we're going to be in person and then go, oh crap, we have to go back to virtual.
No, we had been kind of watching things right up until June-ish, I think. We made the call early. Delta sort of came out and was banging around, and we saw what was going on, and we said, yeah, it's not worth putting people at risk, so we're just going to be virtual again. I would really, really, really like to do an in-person conference.
Absolutely.
So get vaccinated or wear a mask. So
B-sidesde.com, is that it?
It's bsidesdelaware.com. Delaware spelled out.
All right, I'm putting it in the notes. So, bsidesdelaware.com, you can find the CFP there. You can find the dates there, which are the 12th and 13th. Somebody was kind enough to throw that into chat.
Central put it in there. Yes, keeping with the virtual. That was my my off the cuff slogan.
Nice. All right, so yeah, besides Delaware, when it goes back in person, I highly recommend you go to the in-person conference because it is an awesome time. You'll probably see me there when it's in person again. You'll absolutely see Jason there. And really, a lot of other hackers that are from this region, you'll see at B-Sides Delaware. It's a great conference, and it's a good time. And my kids love to go there and lockpick.
Yeah, again, like it's yes, technically it's a security conference, but we have people from all walks of life.
Yeah,
we have people that are.
I gave a talk.
IT.
I gave a talk there about how to start a podcast.
Yeah, we've had
twice.
You had your talk about how to start a podcast. We have this really cool guy who every once in a while does a talk and demonstration on self-defense. We've had people talk about pretty much anything. I want to say there may have been a talk about beer one year. Whatever. Like as long as it's not offensive.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's trying to teach somebody something, like we're cool with it.
I do want to say the online conference last year was also good. So I'm not trying to say don't go because it's online. In fact, if you're not local to Delaware, or at least this side of the country, the virtual conference is a great way to get involved in it anyway, right? So
and the plan moving forward, we're hoping to enact it this year, but the plan moving forward is to keep it hybrid. So
cool.
There will be an online component to it. We had been trying to do the streaming thing prior to this, but we want to make it more hybrid and more interactive. So
yeah. So yeah, it's a good conference, and whether it's virtual or in person, I highly recommend it. It's I've been there as an attendee several times. Even I think before you were involved in it. No, I think you were involved in it the first time I got out there. You got involved in it pretty early, but this year, apparently, I'm dealing with the Discord server or the Discord instance. We should probably talk about that. You and I, that is, not on the show.
Discord.
Right. So I'm assuming that if it's hybrid next year, I'm going to have to deal with that, even if. Don't you ruin my B-Sides Delaware. Anyway.
Automate it.
Automate it. Good idea. All right, so reviews. There's nothing new this time around. We haven't gotten any new reviews in a while. I think February, when I was looking, is the last time we got a review. So, folks, leave us reviews. That's how we know whether you like what we're doing or not. We're just going to assume that you like what we're doing, or maybe that you hate what we're doing, and we're going to change everything. So let us know if you like what we're doing. Oh, Call for Volunteers 2019 is on the B-Sides Delaware homepage. You might want to fix that.
No, it wasn't.
I don't know. That's what B. Cantrell is saying. Anyway,
I will look.
You do that. Fix that right now. All right, so yeah, there's no reviews. This is the part of the show where we just kind of BS for a little while about interesting things that have been going on in our own lives. What?
Yeah,
is
that's
it there?
Just the news feed. No, it's there. It's just the news
okay.
feed. Yeah.
Well, update your news feed. It's not news if it's from 2019.
I did. B-Sides DE 2021 registration is open.
Oh, okay.
Just because there's new news doesn't mean the old news goes away.
Sure it does. That's how this world works.
Yeah, I mean,
the new news
volunteer
overwrites
link,
the old news.
Yeah, the volunteer link probably still goes to an old page. I think it does, yeah. Because, like, being virtual, we didn't have a whole lot of need for volunteers last year. So
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah. The website needs a revamp, a very serious revamp, but we'll get there eventually.
It's a shame you don't have any IT professionals involved to
I know, right?
to do that.
You think being the security community, we'd have somebody who can do a website.
In my experience, people in the security community are good at breaking and burning your website to little pieces. Not so good at writing one.
Yeah, I'm good at protecting them. Also not good at writing them.
Right, I know. It's like the problem when you're run by a bunch of InfoSec and infrastructure people is that nobody has any idea how to design a website.
Yeah.
Yes, our website is black with green text, and that's it. Because it looks like the terminals we're used to being in all day.
Wow, it looks like you never changed from the default the default theme for your instance. Like, yeah, that's because I don't really care.
The theme? What? How? I don't even know how to do that.
But content that matters.
Yeah, it's the content. Anyway, so I've been tinkering with a couple things the past couple weeks. I kept having this weird problem. So we've talked about 3D printing plenty of times on the show. You have an Ender 5 as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Did you ever actually get it working? Because I know you were having trouble with it.
Yeah, I've heard it working a lot.
Okay, good.
At the moment, I haven't messed with it in a little while. I've been so busy.
My printer is almost always printing something. But
that's nice.
But a couple months ago now, I picked up a new build sheet for it, or bed for it, right?
Build plate.
Build plate. That's the word I'm looking for. That's got a PEI coating on it, and PEI is awesome because when it's hot, everything just sticks to it like freaking glue, and when it cools off, it releases really well. And it's been like the best thing ever, right? Well, I was having this problem where when I printed small enough parts, things that were right in the center, where every build always starts, they weren't sticking right anymore, right? And I cleaned the damn thing, and I looked up a number of things. People like, oh, clean it with this, clean it with that, Dawn dish soap, isopropyl alcohol, Windex, all kinds of things, right? And none of it was working anymore, right? And I kept cleaning it and doing whatever, and it didn't work. Finally, I came across a thread on Reddit. Someone's like, take really fine sandpaper and sand it. Not like heavily, because of course you'll sand through. It's only a thin layer of this PEI stuff. You'll sand through it if you go too hard. So I happen to have fine sandpaper because I've done things like body work on cars, and that requires fine sandpaper as you're going down. So I took some of that and I sanded it down, and the whole time I'm just terrified because the finish on the PEI used to be kind of like a glossy, and now it's really scuffed. And I'm looking at it like, I just ruined my PEI sheet. I'm going to have to buy a new one. This sucks. Well, guess what? It worked. So if you've got a PEI build sheet or build, what's the word again? The bed.
Build plate.
Build plate. And things aren't sticking anymore. Lightly sand it. It worked. It did a perfect job. So
very lightly. Like we're talking like 300 or 400 grit sandpaper.
Yeah,
light.
I used 300. I used 800 if I remember correctly, because that was the finest that I had.
Yeah.
And they were saying between 600 and 1200 is what they would recommend.
Yeah, because what happens is as you print on it, like the fact that it's rough is part of what helps it stick to the PEI.
Right.
And as you print on it,
Right.
that gets filled in.
Yep.
Because with microscopic particles, I have I guess it's PEI. Mine is like 1/4 inch thick, or 1/8 inch thick.
So the plate on mine, the plate itself is spring steel, and then it's got a coating on top of the steel, right? And then of course the steel sticks to the magnetic bed. But
No, I just bought a plate, and then I have little clasps that hook it onto the plate.
oh
onto the
yeah, no,
existing plate.
this is right from Creality, and it just sticks to the old magnetic bed, the same bed that was there for.
Oh, that's nice.
I mean, it was really nice. I just pulled off the old textured one and slapped on the PEI. So yeah, it worked out really well.
I may have destroyed the old textured one.
I did too. As soon as I started printing with PETG instead of with PLA, and that's another thing. If you switch from PETG to PLA and back and forth, either get 2 build plates, or get, or you have to clean it really good in between, right? Because the PETG will sort of coat whatever you're building on. In my case, it was the PEI. And it doesn't really come off, but cleaning it with Dawn dish soap, believe it or not, is enough to strip that off, and then you can go back to, you can switch to your other material. I found that out the hard way too, because it wasn't sticking right. But
I don't know if you saw this, but just in case you haven't, glass build plates are all the rage.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's PETG. One of the things that you can print on your printer, if you print it on glass, it will never come off because it specifically adheres to glass.
Yeah, some people say that that's the case with PETG printing on PEI, but I haven't had a problem with that.
Yeah, I forget what it was. I was like, oh, because I was looking at glass plates initially, and I saw this, and I'm like, oh, probably should avoid that then.
No, I got to say that because with the textured mat that came with the Ender 5, basically the first couple times I printed PETG on it, it stuck so well that it tore the plate, tore the build sheet. So obviously I had to replace it. When I was looking at what to replace it with, someone had recommended PEI, so I tried that, and I see no reason to try anything else. It's perfect. As long as the thing... So there's a couple little scratches in it, because when I first got it, I was still learning how to, release something from it. It doesn't just pop off. You have to... If you pull it off... If you can't just pull it off, you have to take it off of the magnetic plate, and then you flex the thing, and it pops right off.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that, so I was still using the little scraping tool that came with it. So I've got a couple gouges in it, but if you avoid getting gouges in it, you get a mirror smooth finish on the bottom of whatever you're printing, which is amazing, right? And some people say you only get that with glass. Well, I get it with PEI. As long as I don't print over one of the little gouges that I made, it's freaking smooth.
I've got glass on mine too, or I've got PEI on mine too, and it's mirror.
Yeah. I mean, it's
really nice prints.
It's great.
I destroyed my original build plate with I had some calibration issues. So the nozzle tried to push itself through the plate.
With the nozzle, yeah, that's not a good way to do it.
No.
Yeah, I had a bed leveling problem before I switched, because the Ender 5s have this reputation for having a warped plate.
Yes,
and
mine was
warped. I think mine has a slight warp too, but it's not bad. So I was really thinking about getting a BL Touch, but once I got the PEI sheet, because it has that spring steel, it kind of made up for that unlevelness or the warpage.
Yeah, mine did too. My bed was warped towards the center, so it was like a bowl.
That's how that's usually how they're warped. Yeah. Mine's like that. So just in the center, it's a little bit, not much, but I mean you're talking millimeters when you're printing, right?
Yeah.
So that's enough to screw it up. But yeah, once I switched the plate, it was better. But anyway, I mean, I don't even think I would try glass. I have a friend who bought an Ender 5 Plus, which is the larger version, right? And that came with a glass build sheet. He's had nothing but trouble getting things to bond to it. The PEI is perfect, so I'm just using the PEI. Screw that.
He's got the digital LCD touchscreen too, doesn't he?
Is it a touchscreen? It came with the BL Touch. It came with a larger larger build area, right? So it's basically physically
Is that the
larger.
Plus or is that the Pro?
I have the Pro. He's got the Plus.
Okay, yeah. So we have the Pros then.
Yeah. But yeah, the Plus is bigger. It's got a glass build plate or sheet or whatever you call that. It's got a BL Touch on it. It's got, I don't remember if it had, I think it does have a different control panel than mine does. So he may have a touch screen.
It's like located in the center, and it's all touch screen and everything.
Yeah. I think he just wanted to be better than me when he bought it. That's why he got that one. But he barely uses it because he was so frustrated by the problems he was having with that glass build sheet. I'm like, I don't have that problem. Maybe you should get a PEI sheet.
Yeah, Creality's interesting because there's a lot of different issues that happen, I guess, with Creality printers. So
yeah, but
they're good, but they're not consistent.
Yeah, once you deal with the issues, though, I mean, my printer's been pretty freaking solid. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah,
but it's been solid since you.
Yeah, I think my
I actually had very few problems with mine when I got it. Like, I started printing off the SD card like immediately, and I had an issue trying to get the heated bed to work, but it turned out it was because the power supply was set to
240 and not
240 instead of So once I discovered that, everything started working again.
Yeah,
just like that.
Yeah, I had the same experience. Like mine started working fine once that was done, and then I upgraded to a BL Touch because it would print okay until I got to detailed fine prints that had like if I wanted to print something that had a little bit of surface and for the first couple layers instead of like the whole thing is surface, I would have adhesion issues.
Yeah.
So I got the BL Touch, and that made it better. And then the build plate made it even better. And right now I think the nozzle is clogged, so I need to fire it up and clean it out.
Yeah, that's a pain in the butt too. I think, you already know about the trick where you loosen up the head a little bit and heat it up and then rejoin it. Because I had a lot of problems with that, where the Bowden tube would get clogged right at the head because of heat soak issues, which you're not supposed to get with those type of Bowden tubes. But if there's any kind of gap there, you'll end up with heat soak that goes up in there. And then I especially had that trouble with PETG, and I still do. If I print with PETG,
that's what's loaded in it now. It's PETG.
Yeah,
I think I ran into the same thing.
As much as I like the output of PETG, because everything feels a little more rigid, a little more solid, a little less breakable than with PLA. I always have trouble with the nozzle clogging or whatever, and that's frustrating. So I usually use PETG now, or not PET, PLA. I am curious about PLA Plus. That could be a good happy medium. I don't know if you've seen PLA Plus yet, but
no, I haven't.
It's basically another sort of compound of PLA, which requires a slightly higher printing temperature, but it has a lot of the properties of PETG with a lot of the benefits of PLA, right? Like the ease of use of PLA, but the strength of PETG. So I'm really tempted to try it out. I just haven't done it yet.
My son has printed a little bit with carbon fiber.
Oh, yeah? That's interesting.
You need a special nozzle for it. You can't just, like, if you put it through that nozzle, it'll destroy it. But the prints look really, really nice. Carbon fiber is not cheap, but the prints look really, really cool.
That's cool. I'll have to look into carbon fiber now. I'm really, this whole thing fascinates me with all the different options you've got, all the different things you can do to print in other ways and whatever. I saw an ad the other day for a 3D printer which basically has 3 different replaceable hot ends?
Extruders?
Whatever.
The hot ends.
The end that heats up and spits out stuff. You can replace it with a laser etcher, a hot end for 3D printing, or a wood router.
Yeah.
And it's like all in one machine, right? It's pretty awesome. Yep. Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, there were a couple of those on Kickstarter.
Yeah, maybe this is the outcome of one of them. I don't know, but it looks pretty cool. It's all modular like that. I'm not going to rush out and buy the thing, but I thought it was pretty cool that this is where it's going, because they're all essentially the same machine. They just have a different end to them.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And then if you want to look at something interesting, well, so there's different types of 3D printers, like you know, we have an XYZ axis one.
Yep.
There's the one that's just like hanging on arms and it just moves the arms all over, which is kind of cool. Then like if you want to look at something really really neat, and I'd love to get one of these. Just haven't found a good one to get. Look at resin printers.
Yes, I have looked at those.
They build down.
Yeah.
Sort of. And it's just like it's a laser. It's just a laser in a bowl of water.
Yeah.
With some goofy stuff at the bottom. It's really really neat.
So one of the things I like to do, or I would like to do more of, but it's really frustrating with a standard 3D printer, is print minifigs for like D&D.
Yeah.
For tabletop games, and they say resin printers are so much better for it. So it's a tempting thing. I don't know if I'm ever going to rush out and buy a resin printer, but that'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be cool for that particular niche.
Much cheaper than the Ender by a lot.
Is it?
Yes, you can get a resin printer for $100.
Maybe I'll look into a. No, I can't. I'm not going to look into a resin printer.
Granted, the $100 ones are not. They're you know, I mean, you're going to get what you pay for.
Yeah, so. Right.
But I haven't, you know, I think probably the most expensive resin printer, I haven't dug deep into it, but, you know, $200 is about the most expensive I've seen. But you can, and a resin printer's print bed, if you will, is as big as you can make the tank. So in theory, you can print some pretty big stuff with a resin printer without going too crazy. It's just as long as you can get the laser to move and point at all the right places, you're good.
Pretty cool. So. Now I'm gonna have to look into resin printers. It's your fault.
You're welcome. Yep.
It's your fault.
I'm here to enable.
So anyway, welcome to 3D printing with Iron Sysadmin podcast. Let's see, what else have I had going? Oh, I've been tinkering with some more Home Assistant stuff. Basically, I was talking to, you guys might remember Alex, who we had on the show, might be 2 months ago now, and he was talking about home automation. And he has this, I don't know, methodology or whatever. He has this thing that he says that home automation isn't just getting your smart speaker to turn on the lights for you. It's having the lights turn on when they're supposed to turn on without you having to tell them to, right? That's home automation, right? It's not just like, oh, I've told the thing to turn on the lights and turn them on for me. That's the same as hitting the switch, except you're using your voice. But like, you know, at 8 a.m., the lights come on. Or you come home from work and the lights come on. Or it plays your favorite podcast when it's supposed to play it. Like that sort of thing, right? So I've been tinkering more and more with, I've been taking that like methodology and I've been trying to apply it to more things. So now I do things like the lights in my office here. I have them on, of course, during the day while I'm working. Well, usually at lunchtime I go out for a walk. So now I have it set up so that when I go for that walk, Home Assistant realizes that I've left the building and it turns off my office lights. Or if we're out somewhere in the evening and it's dark outside already and we come home, the living room lights turn on because that's where we come into the house through. I don't yet have the porch lights connected to Home Assistant, but that's next. You know, so that
are you doing this through like Bluetooth radio or something?
So the Home Assistant app on my phone, of course, knows where I am. And if it's not like perfectly accurate, it's as accurate as your phone's GPS is, right? So if I walk far enough away from the house, the app goes, "Oh, he's left home," and tells my Home Assistant he's no longer home, right? And then that tells my lights to turn off. Right. But you can do it with little Bluetooth LE, you know, like a thing in your pocket or through your phone. If you have sensors in different rooms, you could even tell it to track where you are in the house. So if I walk into the dining room at breakfast time, it'll turn the lights on and play my good morning routine, right? I don't have that stuff, but theoretically, that's a thing I could do.
Right. So my phone, my iPhone, when I get into my car, goes, "Oh, you've connected to that Bluetooth device."
Yeah.
I know what that is. You must be going somewhere. Here's a map of the most recent places that you've been and the most likely one you're headed to.
Yep.
So, like I go out to get the mail in the afternoon, and it's like, you've gotten in the car between 12 and 1 o'clock, and it's a weekday. Here's the map to the post office, as if I'm going to get lost getting there.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah, and that's... So...
That's more machine learning based, but,
that's,
you know, it's still using the radios to do it.
To me, that feels a little creepier, right? Because, you know, obviously, I have an Android phone. You know that. The people who listen to the show know that. Google is telling me those things, which means Google is figuring out what I do with my life, which kind of bothers me a little bit. In your case, your phone or maybe Apple is doing the same thing, right?
Yep.
In my case, this is all self-hosted and completely controlled by me through Home Assistant, right? Which I think is a little cooler, just because it's not some high-paid engineer at Google figuring this stuff out for me, right? And it's all private. I don't know. I just think it's more fun this way.
All I'm saying is that the Bluetooth radio, the MAC address of the Bluetooth radio is what triggers part of that.
Yeah, it's same concept.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been fun. And we've said this a number of times. It's a freaking rabbit hole, and it's going to just keep going deeper and deeper.
Yeah. Well, when you perfect your house, you can come over and set mine up.
Okay. Well, I'll send you some links to smart light bulbs that'll get you started, because that's exactly how I started. And then you can build a Home Assistant, and then you'll be like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do that. Hey, wife, can you put the app on your phone so we can do the same stuff for you?
That's not a thing that's going to happen. Yeah. And at that point, when I disappear, just look for the freshly dug dirt back in the woods.
Okay. And anyway, the only other thing I had going on is on Steam, they just re-released Myst. Do you remember Myst?
Yes, I'm actually waiting for Firmament to come out.
I don't know if I know that one.
You don't know about Firmament. Firmament is by the Myst crew. It is their latest game that they're actively working on right now. That was Kickstarter that ended last year.
Firmament. Well, maybe they're going to use some of the proceeds from re-releasing Myst to fund Firmament. I'll have to look for that now. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, Cyan is still kicking.
Myst is obviously they re-released this game. Myst is a game I played back in the 90s, which you probably did too if you remember it, and I played the heck out of it. I loved this game. It was it's really the first game I remembered that had full motion cutscenes and stuff in it, right? Even though they weren't like what we expect today, where you have all these awesome 3D renderings that look so lifelike and whatever. But it was really kind of groundbreaking for the time. Most of the gameplay...
An actual video.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Most of the gameplay was, clicker, still screen stuff. But then they would put animation on top of it for certain things. And you could always tell, because it was grainy, and, we just didn't have the technology at the time. Well, it's been re-released, and not only has it been re-released, it's been re-released in VR. And recently, as I've talked about before on the show, Mark was kind enough to give me his old VR headset when he upgraded to the I'm blanking now on the name. He upgraded headsets, and he gave me the old one. I had to buy some stuff to make it work, which I did recently, and I've been having lots of fun in VR. 13-year-old me is like, I have VR now! Because that was like a dream when I was a kid, right? Like, VR. Remember Lawnmower Man, right?
Yep, I've been avoiding it.
It's great. I have to say,
I know
great.
I've had the headset on once or twice, and I have to walk away from it because I will never take the thing off.
So for me, it works out because whenever I hook it up, immediately it seems like that's when the kids walk into my office and they're like, ooh, can I play? Because they want to play VR too.
Yeah.
So I have to limit it by waiting until they go to bed at night. And then I fire up the VR, which means I only get an hour or two to play. Although it is dangerous because I could end up being up till 3 a.m. playing VR. But yeah, Myst in VR was a lot of fun. I've already played it through.
Talking about.
Yeah, right. I've already played it through, which maybe it's because I remember the game from when I played it so much when I was younger, right? So I have a lot of the hints and whatever.
Yeah.
What I love about that game is that everything you need is right there in front of you, but the puzzles are not obvious. Right? Some of them are kind of obvious, but like there's books. You pick up the book and you read a book. I'm in VR holding a book up to my face, reading this journal written by, the guy who you're basically retracing his footsteps throughout the game of Myst, right? And it was just such an experience to be able to do it in VR. So if you haven't played Myst in VR, or if you've never played Myst and you like puzzle games, check out Myst in VR. It's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, there were I didn't realize there were this many, but I know that Riven was a sequel to Myst.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently, stop asking me things. Apparently, there were 3 other sequels. So there's a Myst 3, a Myst 4, and a Myst 5.
I knew about Myst 3, but never played it. I did play Riven. That was
There's a
on.
Myst Online, which is called Uru.
I didn't know that either.
And then they have, let's see, they have a game called The Manhole, Spelunks, Cosmic Osmo, and then Abduction.
Interesting.
Which I have Abduction. I haven't played a whole lot of it.
I'm gonna have to look these up now. I'm curious.
Yeah, Firmament is the new one. So if you go to cyan.com, they have all their games listed. But Firmament's the new one. That was really, really cool.
I'll have to check out.
It's like it's very Myst-like, but using new tech, and I'm very, very thrilled to see this thing come out. And I believe they're doing VR by default in it to begin with. So
good. Well, I say good only because I have a VR helmet and I would like to try it. But that was another thing that I liked about the re-implementation of Myst is a lot of times you get 2 different versions of a game. One works in VR, one works in flat, some people call it, or 2D. In this case, it's written in the Unreal Engine, and it basically seamlessly, you can play the game normal keyboard, mouse, monitor.
that's cool.
And you can play it in VR. So basically the same save game I started out in VR, I played it for, an hour or so just on my normal display, and then I went back to VR and picked right up again. It was pretty cool. The UI was a little bit clunky, and I'm hoping they improve that with some updates or whatever, because I bought this maybe 2 weeks after it was released. There were some glitches in the UI, and I hope they fix those. But otherwise, it was still very playable, and it was a very good game. I recorded some of it. I didn't stream any of it, although I was tempted to. I may end up making those into videos to release, but I don't know if I will or not.
You and Mark should get together and Twitch stream together.
So funny you should mention that, because you may remember that Diablo 2 is re-releasing.
I may have pre-ordered it. And
okay,
have
so
the data sitting on my Xbox.
So did I, and so did Mark. And we've been talking about this. So it happens to be that it's releasing the day of our next show. So we've been...
Wow, is it that soon?
Yeah, it's the end of September.
Wow, okay.
Apparently we have Iron Sysadmin scheduled for that night. And both Mark and I are like, it'd be a lot of fun to sit down and play Diablo 2 instead of doing a show. Maybe we'll stream it as a show. So, I don't know. Anybody who's listening or watching, if you want to see us play Diablo 2 instead of doing our next Iron Sysadmin podcast, let us know. I think it might be fun.
I think... I've got a lot of games floating around in my head, but I think it's cross-platform play as well.
If it is, then you are welcome to stream with us.
Which means that I could join too. No camera, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the way we did it, so they're in the open beta, which was only open for a couple days. We did a stream, me and Mark, and we basically did audio through Discord, through a Discord channel that we're both members of. We could do it through the Iron Sysadmin Discord, but we did it through a different one that we're both members of. And then I brought that all into OBS the same way I do for the show, and we streamed. You could see my screen, and you could hear Mark, but we could certainly do it with the 3 of us if you can do Discord and your game at the same time.
I don't see why.
You theoretically could.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. That'd be interesting.
So anyway, if everyone's like, no, I must have Iron Sysadmin podcast on that day, if you feel strongly about that, let us know. But we may actually do that. We may do a night of streaming Diablo 2.
I don't know. When Mark starts singing, Frozen songs in the middle of playing Diablo 2,
maybe we can get him to sing like period appropriate tavern songs or something. That would be so much better. So yeah.
Was it Typicoin Your Witcher?
There you go. I'm gonna sing that.
Which Netflix is giving me the bestest birthday present.
Oh, that's right. There's a Witcher anime coming, isn't there?
Oh, that's already out. I saw it.
Oh, okay. I didn't watch that yet.
It's actually very good. But the second season of Witcher is they're releasing it on my birthday. So.
Awesome. That was delayed because of the pandemic, wasn't it?
I don't know. Was it?
because my wife read the books or some of the books, and then she watched this first season, and that was like 2 years ago, wasn't it?
I thought it was last year, actually.
I
I
could
know
be
time
wrong.
is.
Maybe I'm
I
wrong.
know time is screwy, but I'm pretty sure it was last
Time
year.
is screwy the past 2 years. It's like, wait, what month is it again? What year is it? What happened to 2020?
Yeah, yeah. It feels like 20 years have gone by, and yet now it's September, and I'm like, Jesus, didn't it just turn summer?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, apparently I just spilled a little bit of beer on my keyboard. I have to fix that.
Oh, I- that's.
I don't know how I did
alcohol
it.
abuse.
I moved the beer away from my mouth too quickly. It does not appear to have gotten in the key, so that's good.
Alcohol abuse.
Alcohol abuse, indeed. All right. Hopefully I didn't just ruin my expensive keyboard. Okay. Anyway, that's all I had going on. We've talked about it for like half an hour already. What do you got going on? Anything cool?
Uh,
Be careful with my beer now.
I happened to notice that the PlayStation um, thing video live stream
Thing?
was going on today. Where they're supposed to announce all the new games and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I used to be a PlayStation fan. I had
Yep.
a PS2 and loved the hell out of it. And then I got a PS3. I was lucky enough to get one of the original PS3s from I bought it from a friend.
Before they gimped it.
Yeah, before they gimped it. And could not, I just couldn't get into it. At that point, I had the Xbox from our buddy at the college
Yep.
and had started playing that. And I wanted so desperately to love my PS3 and I just couldn't. And I skipped PS4 entirely and I'm skipping PS5 entirely. But this happened to be coming out and it was on and I was like, oh, I'll take a look and see what's coming for PlayStation. If you own a PlayStation, I'm sorry. Everything that's coming out is a remake. Sony sucks. I don't even know what to say. But I flipped it on, and the opening of this thing was, how do I describe this? So I will caveat this with, I have no idea whatsoever what this has to do with video games or PlayStation or the PS5, because I don't think it has anything to do with any of that.
Okay.
But the opening was amazing. It was, so basically it was like flows out onto a big city, and then you see like a dude sitting in a chair wearing a crown. It's like, what's going on? He's sitting in front of a chessboard. And you see another guy in another building wearing a crown, sitting in front of a different chessboard. Turns out these guys are the kings, and they're playing chess against each other.
Okay.
And every time they move a piece, it shows like a clip of those pieces in the world doing things. And there's lots of action and like very cyberpunky and
Okay.
all sorts. It was like, by the time it was over, I'm like, I don't know what this has to do with PlayStation, but this is how chess should be played. This was amazing.
Is it
This
like
was
battle
the
chess,
most
but at the next
amazing
level?
chess game. Yeah, it was unbelievable. So don't watch the Sony thing for the games because most of them suck.
Watch
and
it
most
for the
of them,
intro.
hey, guess what? They're releasing GTA 5 again.
Oh, good. I'm glad to
This
hear
is
that.
like, from what I understand from the guys that were in the chat, this is like the third or fourth time that they're releasing GTA 5 on the Sony console. But don't worry, they've upped the graphics again.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I mean, you know this. I've been a Sony fan for as much as I play consoles. I don't play consoles nearly as much as I did. Well, I just don't. Right? There's a lot of games I can't
Yeah.
play on console. I don't know if it's because I don't have the twitchy reflexes that I used to have, but I play better on PC. So I play most of
Yeah.
my games on PC.
God of War Ragnarok, they showed a trailer for that. Looks amazing. If I ever got a PlayStation, that's probably the reason I would get it. There's like, I think there's like 2 or 3 games on the PlayStation that I would play, and that would be one of them.
Yeah.
The new Spider-Man 2 game actually looks kind of neat. I don't know. I don't think what they showed in the video was actually from the game, though. I think it was just pre-rendered stuff.
Yeah.
And then apparently they're coming out with a Wolverine game. Outside of that, and like there's a kids game, and there was another game honestly, I'm not sure what it was. I was a little confused. But the rest of the games were all remakes.
Yeah.
Like Drake,
Oh yeah, that's that
yeah. So they're remaking
Drake's
that.
Drake's
Yeah,
Quest or Drake's something or
yeah.
other. Yeah,
Drake's Fortune or something like that.
it's like a Tomb
That's
Raider
being
game
remade.
without the
Yeah,
boobs.
GTA 5 is being remade. What was the other one? They're like everything was a remake. And
Yeah.
it was like I was watching it and I'm like, I watched the opening and I'm like,
So
this is probably gonna be boring. And then I
not
watched the rest of it purely for the commentary of like
not
another goddamn remake.
not to like defend it, but a lot of that could be because of the platform change from 4 to 5. They're probably taking
Maybe.
some of the most popular games from 4 and re-releasing them on 5 because people
Yeah.
want them.
But,
I'm not gonna buy a 5. I mean, can you buy a 5 yet? I don't know, but
that was the other thing. But based on the chat, the Sony fans were not impressed with the lineup at all.
that's because gamers and Star Wars fans are the two hardest people to
That's right.
to impress, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Knights of-
perfect. Perfect.
Knights of the Old Republic is being remade for Sony
Oh,
again. So.
well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
So yeah. But that was like, I kind of watched that today in the background. I was like, oh, that opening was amazing. I was like, this is great, and the rest of it was like, whatever. Except for the one new game. It's not a Sony exclusive, but if you've played Borderlands, we talked about this before the
Yeah.
show, but if you've played Borderlands and you ever played the DLC in Borderlands 2, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep is what it was called. Tiny Tina got her own game called Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and it looks amazing, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. It looks so much fun.
That's cool.
I like the humor that comes out from her. I just think it's hilarious. So
Yeah.
outside of that, it's been planning for B-sides, battling Mother Nature.
Yeah, right. Keeping the water out of your
working.
house.
Yeah. Well, we were successful.
That's good.
Now I just need to go hire somebody to make us permanently successful. So
Good.
So once I figure out what that job is called, I'll find somebody to do it.
Yeah, my brother-in-law is looking at the same thing.
Irrigation specialist?
Could be. I don't know, but he's got similar basement water problems. So if he has any success with it, I'll let you know.
I searched around for local places, and I either got the sewage plant, which I don't think is what I want, or
Never know.
or I got landscapers, and I kept going. But I like, as much as I'd love somebody to come to mow the lawn for me, I don't think this is what I need.
Mark.
But I think landscapers might be the closest.
Mark had flooding problems, and had it fixed by someone. I can ask him, or you can ask him if you want to. What, how he found that. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Maybe it is a landscaper. Maybe landscapers do that. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because it is kind of like landscaping, right? A lot of it is all about water redirection and whatever. And landscapers do that.
I want to
kind
get
of
it
stuff.
done. I have no idea what it's going to cost. We because the damage that we had with rugs and walls and stuff, the insurance gave us a chunk of money. Luckily, so this is not apparently a normal thing. We had some sort of a rider on our insurance that neither of us were aware of that allowed them to cover. I want to say they called it groundwater. So there's no flooding insurance. There's no flood insurance. Nobody has flood insurance. That's not a thing that people have around anywhere.
Yeah.
Like most of the U.S., the majority of the U.S. does not have flood insurance.
Right.
And
because they consider it an act of God and ground movement and whatever. Yeah.
The groundwater was covered because of some weird loophole in a rider that we had or something. So even the adjuster was like, "I'm surprised that you have this. Nobody ever has this." I'm like,
lucky you.
I don't know what it is. But apparently,
but okay, great.
It came with the insurance policy, so when we said just give us a bare bones insurance policy, that's what they put on there.
Lucky you.
Yeah, so lucky us. So we have a little bit of money, but I also have to get the rugs replaced, and some of the walls need to be cut out. And
I mean, if I were you, I would spend the money on fixing the problem.
We're going to,
and then just eat the expense of fixing the stuff interior.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's just going to happen again. Yeah.
Technically, my rug in my office is going to be replaced. I did a whole bunch of cleaning in here, and it's the must smell isn't really there anymore, and it's kind of okay. So, if I don't get my rug replaced, like I don't care. But
Well,
the
I
rug in
mean,
the rug in my son's room is ruined, so it has to get replaced because it
you
stinks.
you worked in the basement of that hall at the college where I did, so you're used to breathing in mold, so it's fine.
Amongst other things, yes. Mold, body odor from students.
Yeah, right, right. My
So,
gosh.
so
Anyway,
yeah, that's about it. Other than that, it's just kind of chilling out and doing my thing. A little work around the house, a little lawn work. Mother Nature has been on a tear lately.
she's just not
We
happy.
we have gotten so much rain.
Yep. I mean, most of it's from hurricanes and stuff, so like that's not
Yeah.
that out of the ordinary.
Yeah, today's adventure was getting the brakes or getting the car inspected, and when I went to go do that, the dog had. You've had dogs,
Uh
so
huh.
I've never seen this before, but apparently this is a thing. So that the elbow on the dog's leg um, gets these. They're basically blood blisters, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll get like this rough patch on their arm, and for whatever reason, hers is not just a rough patch. It has turned into like a, probably the size of a golf ball,
Wow.
full of blood. And she was, I guess, out on the porch, and my wife went to let her in and was like, "Why is there blood everywhere?"
Wow.
So it ruptured,
That
and so
sucks.
we had to go deal with that, and I had to go get stuff for the dog, and so it was a day. But
Good
she's
times.
okay.
Well, that's
She's
good.
okay. We're just like, she's walking around with a bandage on her arm now. So
Yeah. Leg. It's a leg, not an arm.
yeah, yeah,
All right. Well, I mean that sounds like fun.
it
Not
is.
not
It
really,
is.
but okay. Pets.
Pets,
It's
pets are a thing.
it's a thing you have to deal with if you choose to have pets. So
All right, I've prattled enough. Push a button.
yeah, I think we're gonna go on into the news and then get this show on the road. So here we go. All right. So we've got news tonight. Not as much as usual, but we have some news. So the first article comes from Live Science, and I picked this up because it just sounds really interesting. And it's one of those cases where the headline sounds like, "Oh my God, there's aliens about to come invade," and then when you read the article, it's more like there's some phenomenon in space that's making a thing that we don't know yet, we don't understand yet. Strange repeating radio signal near the center of the Milky Way has scientists stumped. It is an interesting read, but it's basically there's a radio telescope. I didn't know that was a thing, but I guess it is. It's not a telescope you
Yep.
see through; it's a telescope you hear through.
Yes.
There's a radio telescope. I think it's in Australia, if I read this
Yep.
correctly.
The
That
Australian Square Kilometer Array Pathfinder.
Yes, ASKAP, and that's part of the name of the thing that it's found. The radio source known as ASKAP J173608.2-321635.
Rolls right off the lips.
Yeah, right. It's really easy to remember, real repeatable. Basically, it's got a weird repeating pattern to it, which is unlike anything we've heard in space before. They go into a lot of details about different sort of phenomena we've encountered that are similar but not the same. It's an interesting read. I was really hoping it was going to turn into like SETI at home has finally found something, and we're not alone in the universe. But that doesn't sound like where this is leading.
Yeah, the thing that I don't like about this, like this great by all means like report it, but they sort of bury it in here is,
Mm-hmm.
they tried to match the energy source with observations from other telescopes, and
And they
couldn't.
can't. Yeah.
Like we didn't hear it. So
Yeah. The
did it
first thing
really
I
hear something, or is this some sort of bug in the software?
That's the first thing I wondered, right? So, and I don't understand how these things work or if they're different, right? Is this one able to hear it and the others aren't? Is that the thing? Is it that there's a problem with this one and it's not a real thing? Like I don't know. I don't know what the. I'd assume
it
that
can
they wouldn't
be.
report on it if there wasn't like some
Yeah,
kind of fact behind it, but I don't know.
It can be it could be a combination of those things. So there's an episode of Talk Python to Me from I think March of last year, which I happen to know because I'm a little bit behind on podcasts. Where the guest or the guests rather that was on the podcast work for one of these large, these square kilometer arrays. I don't think it's the Australian one. I could be wrong, but and they sort of explain how the whole thing works and the utter ridiculous amount of data that they get, like, petabytes of data per day, and how they deal with it. So, I mean, if you're really interested in how the stuff works and what they're doing, that's actually a really good podcast to listen to. It was very interesting.
It's kind of cool. For some reason, I'm like, just because I had that brief stint as an HPC administrator, I'm not surprised that on a Python podcast they would talk about something like this, because they're very related. Python and HPC are very closely related, because a lot of people write in Python to do number crunching on HPC arrays, so.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a lot of libraries for Python that do exactly what that is, right? So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, so let's see. The next article we've got is from Apple Insider, and the headline, again, right, so this clickbaity thing, after chiding Apple on privacy, Germany says it uses Pegasus spyware. And basically the article is, I guess, like a month ago, remember Apple announced they're going to start trying to detect child abuse and child sexual content in photographs on iOS devices, using on-device AI to try to identify things based on known hashes, right? And the privacy folks went, "Oh my God, you're looking at my pictures." I don't really know where I fall on that. Yeah, it sounds kind of weird, but it is happening on device, right? So it's happening on your device, right? So is that really a privacy problem? I don't know. Anyway, apparently Germany's federal body, and they mention what arm of Germany's federal...
The BKA, the Federal Crime Police Office.
So that's the thing, right? So the BKA is the arm of the government that has admitted to using this spyware. There's a different arm of the government that deals with privacy, and they're the ones that were complaining about Apple's supposed privacy problem here, right? And the path they're going down and how it's concerning. So if it works anything like the U.S. government, it's probably because these two arms of the government don't even talk to each other, and they have no idea, right? So the title of this article is a little misleading, right? They say, Germany, as though every person in Germany said, Apple are evil. Oh, we all use spyware. It's really not that cut and dry. But anyway, the point of the article is that German authorities have admitted to using Pegasus spyware to kind of, snoop on suspects, people of interest, right? And there's quite a bit of detail in the article about all of that, and how they're hypocrites because of what this other arm of the German government said about Apple.
Yeah, and Pegasus, by the way, is the spyware put out by the NSO group, the infamous NSO group that has been hacked multiple times and is a cause of all sorts of consternation about spyware, because they're basically building cyber warfare tools and selling them to damn near everybody.
Right.
With no conscience at all. They don't care who it is.
The article also says that Germany's government says that they have limited the use of this spyware and they've turned off certain features. I don't know. How much can you believe that? Right? So, like, I'm putting spyware on people's devices. Isn't that bad enough? Oh, but it's not so bad. I turned off features.
Well, it depends, right? So if you're putting spyware on average Joe's machines without any due process, that's like, what the hell?
Right.
But if you're doing it through a sting operation with the courts knowing about, If process is being
That's another
followed
thing
properly, then maybe it's a different story.
That's another thing where context is missing from this article, right? The idea that the government is spying on people in itself is like, oh my god, they're spying on people. But if it's a case of like law enforcement or whatever, or things akin to what the NSA does in the U.S., where they're spying on foreign governments and whatever for the purpose of national security, I don't know. Those get to be gray areas, right? Because it's privacy is privacy, but privacy of other citizens of other governments, it gets weird, right? Because these are governments that we may literally be at war with, or Germany could eventually be at war with. I don't know. I don't know where I fall in all that.
I feel like the whole, well, so there's a couple things. So I think the Apple thing is the whole Apple CSAM scanning thing was blown entirely out of proportion for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So when it first came out and people were like freaking out about it, like they're looking at my pictures, very, very clearly there was a misunderstanding, like this absolutely broad daylight misunderstanding of it's running on your phone.
Right.
It's not actually transferring those pictures to Apple and somebody's looking, like this is happening on your local device. And it muddied the waters further by trying to explain how iPhotos, what the hell is it called? Apple Photos in iCloud. How like the circumstances under which those would be scanned, because basically it's the only scanning that's happening is on your handheld device. Your phone is doing the scanning. So the only way that your iCloud photos would be scanned is if you're syncing them with your phone. So if you don't sync them with your phone, they can't see them because everything's encrypted, et cetera, et cetera. That was like the first big thing, and that like at that point I almost basically tuned it out because I was like, this is stupid because people are freaking out over the wrong thing. And I still think that's a dumb reason to freak out over it. But there are two other reasons that are actually fairly legitimate. One is that the photo DNA technique that they're using has some problems. So there's a legitimate technical issue that needs to be worked through before this is a viable solution, because it is possible to craft an image that would get people in trouble, etc., whatever. The other issue is more of a political what if issue, and the idea is if they're doing this on the phone, and look, the cat's out of the bag at this point, right? So like they know it's possible. So if governments want to do this, they're just going to push it.
Yeah.
But if you could run a scan on their phone for pictures and looking for child pornography, you could run a scan on their phone looking for whatever we want you to look for and then report back to us.
Yep. Looking for legit, drug use or looking for, whatever. Looking for people in turbans. Right.
Exactly. Perfectly legit. Yes. But again, cat's out of the bag. I think if this is a thing that would happen, then it's just going to happen.
It's going to happen, right?
So the whole CSAM thing at this point, like, yes, by all means, please stop child pornography. Like,
Yeah, right. The problem is the protect the children argument is too easy to be like, oh yeah, well absolutely, yes, we have to protect the children. But then it turns into, well, in order to protect the children, we have to take away all these things that you consider valuable, rights or privacies, right? And that's where it gets to be difficult. Yes, we all want to see children protected because they're children, right? And nobody wants to see children harmed in any way, whether it's through sexually explicit things or through abuse or through whatever. There's 100 different reasons, right? But we can't really give away our privacy in the name of protecting the children. But then if you say that out loud, you're like, oh, well, people will accuse you of being for, child abuse. And
think of the children.
Think of the children, yeah.
This might be the first instance of think of the children where they're actually thinking of the children.
Yeah, right.
The whole purpose of this is Yeah.
because of the history of that argument, we all knee jerk react. Oh, but our privacy.
Yeah, no. No. By all means, like I would
Yeah,
like to know more about the process, and
yeah,
I want to know
yeah,
exactly how it goes, like
yeah.
and etc. But yeah, like it's actually just because you're trying to protect kids, which is weird, and I think like a lot of people are like, wait,
Wait, what? You actually have
you're
good motives?
no, there's got to be more to this.
There's
It's not
more.
just for
There has
kids.
to be more to this.
Yeah, yeah. Which is I mean sad but funny. But
Yes, it is. All right. So moving along, I hate this article, but I wanted to bring it up anyway. So this is from
fuck
The
them.
Guardian,
Excuse me.
right?
Sorry.
Sorry, you don't like the LAPD. Okay. The LAPD officers are told to collect social media data on every civilian they stop. Now, again, article headline, I think, sort of blown out of proportion. What this comes down to is when the police stop somebody, whether you are being accused of a crime or not, right? They have you fill out this like witness card or this like info card where they gather your contact info and your statement and whatever. And now what they're including on that card is tell us your social media, handle or ID or whatever. And it's
You
like,
are not required by law to give that information.
sure,
Period.
right? So
End of sentence.
that's kind of the point here, right? So, and that's why I included the article. I can understand why they ask for it, but don't give them that. Period, right? They have no reason to. If they are investigating a crime that occurred at a single point in time, they have no reason to go look at your social media profile to see who you are or what you do or what you're interested in or who your friends are or any of that crap. They need to know the facts about what happened right there in that moment. And that's what that card is meant to capture, right? There's no reason that they need other information about you. Aside from that, social media profiles are generally public, right? There's no reason you need to identify yourself as I'm this person on social media. If they want that info, they can go do the freaking legwork to find it themselves.
There's a
Argue
picture
whether
in
they
here.
should or shouldn't, right? But
Yeah, there's a picture in here of these field interview cards, which have information on them, and
Yeah.
and there's a thing on here that says that they can request your social security number. I don't think that's actually required by law.
you know what? There's a ton of very leading pictures in this article. Pictures of police in riot gear, pictures of police with a bunch of people handcuffed.
Yeah.
It's a very
course.
leading article. It's the Guardian. I don't know if I trust a
Well,
whole lot
so-
about this article, to be honest. But the
Yeah, well,
point
there's-
still
there's that,
remains.
to be perfectly blunt, the LAPD is known for being utterly corrupt and
Yeah.
like having all sorts of problems. So like they do stop and frisk and all that stuff.
Right.
But some of this stuff. So my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm not. I'm not. I don't have firsthand knowledge. But my understanding is that unless, actually, even if you are taken into custody, you are not required by law to present identification. Period.
Right.
So like, there's only certain points in time where things have happened. Like short of being under arrest, you don't have to. You're not required by law to show any of that. So like asking for your social security number, like, yeah, no.
Right.
Like, just it's not
Right.
gonna happen. Have fun arresting me and taking me to jail on that one, because that's I'm not giving you my social media accounts. I don't give those to anybody. I'm not giving you my social security number. What else? I'll tell you my name, and that's about it. I'm not required unless you're arresting me, in which case you're going to run my
Right.
prints. And
Yeah,
everything
that's my
else.
thing,
And then,
right? So if
because
you
in the military,
like,
you'll know everything. So
they specify that in the article. Now again, the article has a number of things that I have problems with, but this is not if you're being arrested. This is like
yes,
this is an info card for
Yes.
I'm a witness to a crime, right?
This is part. So how do I put this? I do not follow the thin blue line or whatever bullshit thing that's out there now. I have had friends who are police. I think there are some very upstanding police out there. But I will also say that the whole all cops are bastards movement isn't wrong, because what happens is, and this isn't always the cop's fault. They're in a position of authority, but when you're basically taught, when a cop asks you a question, you answer it.
Right.
So if a cop asks you, I need your social media and your social security number, like, people are just going to give it to them
because they think they have to.
People do not understand their rights.
Right.
This is not information that you need.
And
the police department, this specifically, the police department is taking advantage of that.
Yes.
To be able to build dossiers on people. And this is not a conspiracy thing. They are able to use that to tie that to people, potentially to use it for solving crimes, but especially in the case of LAPD and several other organizations, that's not all it's used for. It's also used for putting down protests and, like, all sorts of very negative things that people have an absolute right to do.
Right.
And that's how they use it. And that, in that case, like, to me, that's, they kiss my ass. Like, take me to jail, because I'm not giving you that information.
Yeah, I mean, you and I fall on slightly different sides of this argument, and I don't want to make this a political debate or whatever,
Okay.
right? Like, I generally believe, in my own experience, a lot of cops get a bad rap, right? But there are absolutely cops out there that are not, that don't have your best interests in heart. They're on a power trip. I've seen it locally here in the little town that we live in, right? I mean, my dad has run with EMS, and he's had a close relationship with lots of police officers in this little town that we're in. And even he'll tell you that a lot of them are on a power trip. It's a thing that comes with the badge sometimes, right? And I hate that it's true, but I also think that there's a lot of cops that get a bad rap because of the bad apples. And there may be organizations that are more corrupt than others. All I can see is what's nearby, but
and I think some of the reason that the police end up in the position that they're in is because they've been asked to do everything.
Right.
My wife worked as a nurse for a while at a it's like a halfway house, if you will, and had somebody who fell over and was a heavy-set woman, and she couldn't get her up. So she called for ambulance assistance to pick her up. And the police are who showed up.
Yeah.
Like, hands on weapons, coming in, trying to, like, look at, like, what's going on, et cetera. And it's like, why are the police here?
That's actually not uncommon, right? And
no, it's not.
And you wouldn't know this unless you've worked with EMS. Sometimes when there's just a thing that does not necessarily require medical attention, but requires strong people, they'll send the cops or the firefighters instead of the ambulance, right? And that comes down to whoever answered the phone when you... Right, exactly. They should not have showed up with hands on their guns, right?
But no, my point is the police came in all, pushy and guns on their whatever.
Right.
The police didn't help. They weren't there to help. The police were there to assess the situation, blah, 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 look for whatever, and refused to help her. She had to wait for the ambulance to come to help her.
That's fine.
That's not why they were sent. They were sent because that's procedure.
Right.
So, I mean, that's my point, right? And there's a couple of cities, towns, etc. across the U.S. now who are changing how they're doing things and are sending out, mental health professionals or just the EMS or whoever, and not sending police. And weirdly enough, they've had this really precipitous drop in the amount of incidents. So, I'm not sure there's a correlation there.
And maybe it's because I'm generally an optimist. I always feel like there's more than one side to these stories. And I also feel like a lot of these cases are very difficult to judge from the sidelines like we get to do, right? You look back at an incident, it's really easy to say that person did the wrong thing, right? Whether it was a cop or the person that the cop arrested, right? We can all look back at all the various events of the past couple years and be like, well, that guy was in the wrong. That guy was in the wrong. Why did that guy respond the way that he did? That guy was obviously a criminal, but whatever, right? Pick any of the incidents that have occurred. But
armchair quarterback, hindsight is 20/20, etc.
We weren't there in the moment, right? And I'm not trying to justify any of the atrocities that we've seen in the news in the past couple of years, but I'm simply saying it's really easy to look at a situation from outside and say, well, that guy reacted in the wrong way, right? I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to defend anybody. I'm always looking. I'm an optimist. I'm always looking for like, oh, well, that guy's been misjudged. Well, sometimes I'm wrong. He may have been a complete asshole, and he had it in for the guy that he. Whatever.
And maybe if we walk away from cops are the problem, maybe we just looking at it and saying that's weird. We're sending the cops out for everything, including these 900 situations that they're simply not trained for.
Right.
They do not get this training. Period. End of story. Like, this is not something they will ever be trained for.
Yep.
Maybe we should send out people who are trained for this sort of thing, and there'll be less of a problem. Like, they're adults. If they can evaluate, like, you can have cops on standby or whatever, but if they don't need to be there, then don't send them.
The other side could be, are there people available that are trained for that thing? Cops are generally sent out for almost anything because they're expected to deal with anything, right? And a lot of them can't, and that's why we end up in some of the situations that we've been in. They've responded poorly to a thing they weren't trained to deal with in the first place. You know what I mean?
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to make it a political thing. I'm just, again, this is just my outlook on just about anything, right? I always, I have trouble believing that most people are inherently evil, right? They were trying to do the thing they thought was right at the time, and they made a bad choice, right? Now, when you're a police officer, a bad choice has a lot of consequences. I'm not saying they shouldn't be held accountable for those things, but I also feel like crucifying the entire police force in the entire freaking United States of America might not be the right reaction.
Yes. And I don't want to like, so I think the way to put it is not that I believe every cop is evil and etc. I think the underlying system that is training them what to do, how to react, etc. That's the problem.
That could be true.
It's not that Joe Cop is just an inherently evil person, and because he became a cop suddenly he's going to go out and kill people.
Right.
But the way the system is set up, Joe Cop is going to go out and he's going to lean on certain people, and he's going to react different ways to different people because this is what he's been taught to do, and this is the information he's been given and what he's been told he has to do, how to deal with it. And I think that system is very broken. I mean, there's a NPR had a really good series on the system. I think it was used in New York. I forget what it was called, but the guy who it was basically a system based on statistical analysis. And in the end, it worked, but it also very much broke things because now the way that it worked, it was targeting different areas and sending cops out to those areas and saying, this particular crime happens this many times in this area, so therefore you must bust this many people. Yeah, it was on the media.
It was the one I heard a similar report. It was from New York. There was this guy who designed a statistical analysis program that the NYPD used to help identify crimes, and it was working really well, right? And then he stepped away, and then it became corrupt in the way that it was being used, and then it was basically identifying criminals almost before they were criminals, but then they were targeted.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I heard it on Reply All, which
right.
It's not an NPR production, but they were previous NPR hosts, if I remember correctly. The folks who do Reply All.
I swear this was on the media, not on Reply All.
I heard it on Reply All.
I've heard it a couple times. So. But I mean, it's
called like the Crime Machine or something. It was the title of the post.
The idea was like this area has this type of crime, so therefore send cops there, and every day they should write this many tickets or arrest this many people for this type of crime.
Yep.
And cops are now you've got quotas on cops.
Yep.
And you're going to do a bad job and you're going to get in trouble if you don't arrest X number of people. So now
Right.
you're looking for like...
Now you're looking for
instead
reasons
of-
to arrest
instead of-
people,
right,
and
exactly.
basically they took the good intentions of
corrupts
that
itself.
machine
Yes.
and turned it around on its head, and now it's arresting people for stuff that, maybe they didn't, maybe they committed a crime, but maybe
Right.
whatever. Yeah, it was corrupted. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the whole like it.
Now I'm gonna have to go look up that
definitely think
episode
that
because
there's-
someone's gonna
yeah.
ask.
Right. I absolutely think that there are cops that are just horrible people. Like,
Yeah.
the whole. I mean, the one thing that really bothers me, and this has happened in a lot of the national cases of shootings, and stuff that's gone on, you find that those cops that are in trouble have been in trouble and have numerous complaints against them, to the point where, I mean, in one case, the guy had been fired from the police force and just walked over to the next town, and they hired him up, didn't care about his background, and he went and killed somebody. Like, that sort of thing, that is a systemic problem like, why are you not background checking people? Like, it's a cop, for God's sake. Like, what the hell? So that sort of that's the sort of stuff that I'm talking about. Like, yeah, I mean, I know the ACAB stuff is harsh, but my personal feeling on it is that it's definitely pointing at the systemic issues, not necessarily. There's definitely individual people that are bad, but it's not necessarily the individuals that are the issue.
So
Anyway.
the Crime Machine Part 1 and 2 from the Reply All podcast, episodes 127 and 128. I'm going to put them in the show, or I'll put 127 in the show notes. You can find 128 yourself. But
Crime
that's
Machine.
what I heard that recited the exact same story you just told me. And then we should move on and finish up the show because we've gone on for quite a bit about this.
I must have heard it on there too.
It's the exact
Anyway.
same thing you were just describing is what I heard on that
Yep.
episode.
Okay. Now that we've solved all the problems with the police department, let's talk about how we fix Linux.
Yeah, so we've talked about CentOS Streams and the weird move, and we even had Rich Bowen on the show to talk about CentOS Streams and CentOS and the change and the stuff that Red Hat was accused of, and all kinds of nasty crap and good crap and whatever. And we've mentioned Alma Linux and Rocky Linux, if you remember, as alternatives to CentOS Streams for folks who want the old model of CentOS back. Alma Linux hit the world first, and I guess there's a company called Cloud Linux that is supporting Alma Linux. They offer like support packages and whatever to go around Alma. Well, now CIQ, which apparently is I didn't look deeply into CIQ. However, this particular article implies that the guy behind CentOS Linux, which I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but it's right here in the article if I can just scan for it. Damn it. The guy who came up with Rocky Linux.
It's right in the name of the article. It's Gregory Kurtzer. It's right in the
It
head
is.
of the article.
Look at that. Sorry, Gregory Kurtzer. I didn't think it was in the title, so I'm looking down in the text. All right, so I'll just read it, right? So this is from PR Newswire, whoever that is. Founder of CentOS Linux and Rocky Linux, Gregory Kurtzer disrupts legacy software and support business model with worldwide CIQ debut. And this is essentially, there is now a business supporting Rocky Linux, right? Which is what this comes down to. Read the article if you want the full info. But I heard about this in some internal chatter today. And since it is a public article, and I really don't have any other context other than what's in this article, I figured it was safe enough to share on the show. Even though, being that I work for a rather large company that supports open source software, this might seem like, something I may
Everybody
have
can still get along.
something I may have inside information on. I really don't. But yeah, so if you want to run Rocky Linux, you can now get support from CIQ, which is kind of interesting. In a lot of ways, this mimics really how Red Hat got our start, right? So open source software, offering a support model around it. That's exactly really how Red Hat started. I don't know if that means that CIQ is on the same path that we're on, or if they will succeed or not. But I thought it was newsworthy, and so it's here.
Yeah. So So CIQ apparently is Control IQ because that's the website, controliq.com.
Okay.
Like CTRL, like control on your keyboard. I don't know what
Control
that means.
IQ. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but okay. I do want to. I would like to plead with the world for a moment. Can we please stop using the word disrupt? He created a tech support company. Congratulations. You haven't disrupted a goddamn thing.
He's also referred to as legendary in this article, so I don't.
I mean,
legendary.
that's fine.
Legendary is a big word.
Okay. I mean, maybe he is. I don't know. Like, I don't know the guy. So, and I've used CentOS for years.
I couldn't remember his name, so he can't be that legendary. At least in my mind. I don't know.
I didn't know his name until this. Actually, I wasn't aware that he was the founder of CentOS. It was, I can't remember the guy's name that I always saw putting the updates out for CentOS, but it was not a Gregory Kurtzer.
Okay.
So I didn't know his name. Like, whatever. Like, cool. You started a company. You're doing tech support. I'm very confused as to what exactly here is being disrupted.
You're right.
I would like to know.
It's really just another company offering support around a Linux distribution, which is what Ubuntu does. It's what whoever supports SUSE Linux now does. It's what Red Hat does. This isn't disruptive. It's just another company that's doing something that a number of companies are already doing. So,
I click through the website because I'm like, oh, okay, he's disrupting it. So there's
what's
something
disruptive
new
about
and interesting here, right? Like, this is some sort of new angle on how to do. And I'm sort of looking through his website, and I'm like, okay, so he supports software. Like, I don't understand what the difference is here.
Yeah.
So
and
if I'm wrong, please let me know.
There's like these full support from open source enthusiasts, right? And there's these 4 points they bring out. Community. Well, that's not really support. That's actively listening and partnering with the Rocky Linux community. Okay, so Red Hat does that, except not for Rocky, but for Fedora.
You could argue that any company
supports
their community, like
enterprise, creating enterprise class solutions at scale. Yeah, nobody does that. Deep level assistance from the founders of Rocky Linux software. Nobody does that. And scale, multi-cloud, multi-cluster, performance, scalable, flexible, and automation. Totally new, disruptive.
Yeah, so I don't want anybody to misunderstand this. I wish the guy the best of luck.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope his company is great.
Absolutely.
I'm not tearing apart.
What just occurred? All right, Jason, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm getting a ton of feedback from your mic right now. Did you bump a button again? I had to mute you. It's terrible. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. I'm sorry if anybody is deafened by Jason's microphone. Switch back to your earpods. We'll finish up the show, man. If it'll let you switch. Uh-oh. We lost him. Oh, now he's back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I have no idea what just occurred.
I don't know. Like you started saying like what just occurred, and then I was muted. And I'm like, I was nowhere near the keyboard. Why am I muted?
No, I muted you because we were getting what sounded like, I don't know, some kind of an alarm coming from your mic.
I didn't hear anything on this end.
Yeah, well,
like my screen.
I wouldn't think that you would.
The screen kind of went dark, like at the moment that you said that, and I was like, I don't know, did some sort of weird event happen? Because like, not like my screen, like your image in Riverside changed.
That's interesting.
It got a little darker, and I can't see anything now because I've got this stupid thing from Riverside telling me I need to refresh to continue recording, even though I just did.
I don't know. I'm hoping we didn't lose the well, I'll have a local recording if I have to use it, but at any rate, yeah, so I think you were simply saying that you wish the folks at CIQ well, which is probably a good sentiment. To end the show on, right?
not trying to bash his company by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
I just, to say that you're disruptive means that you're doing something new and interesting, and not that what he's doing isn't interesting, but
it's not really new.
It's a tech support company.
Yeah.
Like, that's great, that's wonderful, but it's just a tech support company. So you lost half of his face too.
Yeah, that was because the same thing we saw earlier when you switched mics, where it reset my view, and I had to fix that. So it should be fixed now in the stream. So anyway, folks, I'm grateful for anyone who stuck with us for this far. I did not think that without Uncle Mark we would go on for 3 hours, but we did. And really, Jason's mic going crazy is the only thing that really stopped us. So, thank you for sticking around if you're watching the live stream. If you're listening to the audio-only version, thank you as well for listening. If you want to watch us live, you should check out the Iron Sysadmin podcast on both Twitch and YouTube. The links to both of those are in the show notes. The links to all the crap we talked about tonight, wherever I could gather the links, are also in the show notes. Jason, if you can figure out what episode of the Talk Python to Me podcast had that information about radio telescopes, that'd be great if you could get it to me, and I'll try to put that in the show notes as well. Yeah, so that's just about everything. If you want to find us on social media, look us up on both Twitter and Facebook. Look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Remember, you can support us on Patreon and Teespring. I talked about that earlier. Again, links in the notes. I'm not going to belabor this any more than I have to. Jason, do you have any final words for the listeners tonight?
I'm afraid to talk loudly.
Because you might make your mic go weird again?
I also can't mute myself, so, if I have to cough or something, it's like...
Okay, well, we're almost done, so it's fine. Just don't cough for the next couple minutes.
Episode number 257, by the way.
Episode 257. All right, I will make sure.
It was March 28th, 2020.
Episode 257. So that's in the notes as well, along with a link to the Talk Python. It's just talkpython.fm.
Yeah, and holy crap, am I behind?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've basically, I don't listen to podcasts anymore because I can't keep up. I listen to a couple, and that's about it. A lot of them that I listen to every day, I don't listen to anymore. I haven't listened to Reply All in probably 1.5 years since I stopped commuting, even though that was a great show, right? It is a great show. I'm sure it's still on the air.
Yeah,
they're
actually,
great at what they do.
When the world ended, I didn't have a reason. I didn't have a commuter or anything to listen to podcasts on, so I kind of fell behind on everything. So
yeah. Well, since I started working remotely, it's been the same for me. I don't listen to as many podcasts as I used to.
It's super weird and interesting to listen to podcasts from the beginning of 2020 now, because everybody it's like one day it was everything's wonderful and everything's roses,
and then the next day it's like, oh my god, everything's locked down. The world's ending.
The next day they're like, I've been awake for 72 hours straight. I don't know what to do. I can't leave my house. Should we do a podcast? It's really funny.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. All right, folks. Well, like I said, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in live. I don't really have much else to say except thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. So hope everyone has a good night, and I just need to find the end screen here, and we're going to go. Good night, everybody.
Night all.